30, Town of Northborough Fire Station Building Committee meeting to order. I'd like to note that John Rapper is sitting here as the liaison from financial planning. He does not have a voting role in this committee. First item is the approval of minutes from May 8, 2024 meeting. Mitch, I understand you have concerns?
Yeah, the meeting minutes came out to the board about 3 hours before the meeting, and there's at least one item that I think, from my perspective, isn't ready for approval yet. With that amount of time, there wasn't time to review the video and suggest amendments. So my suggestion is we hold till the next meeting.
Okay, you want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion. We table the meeting minutes of May 8th, 2024 until our next regular meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, presentation and vote on design development cost estimate. I guess we'd hear from the architects first.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so just to remind, we're going to talk about costs, as Dawn said. This is a similar slide that you've seen before, just to remember that total project costs are made up of the hard construction costs and the soft costs. The hard construction costs are for our team, TCI, the estimate that we handed out to you. We had, Colliers also had a cost estimator, PM&C, do an estimate, and then the two estimators and the design team and Colliers all met together and did a reconciliation process, which we can talk a little bit about. But the hard construction cost was based on a design development estimating package, which had drawings, it had outline specifications, and there was one engineering narrative, and that was for an alternate heating system to eliminate the radiant heating from the apparatus space. But other than that, it was all drawings and specifications. So the drawings and the specifications are more developed than in the schematic design level, but they're not quite to the CD level yet. We're constantly building upon the information that we have. So where information wasn't available, the cost estimators were directed to make different assumptions based on their knowledge and experience and guidance that we gave them, both in the drawings and then through the reconciliation process. At this point, we're still carrying a design and pricing contingency. It's a 5%, so it's a little less than it was at the schematic design estimate, and that's because, again, there's more information in all of the documents for them to go on. They can drop that contingency down because they have more information at this point. And then the estimate that you have has three alternate options. There's the apparatus bay heating alternate, so that's to eliminate the radiant heat and to change the heating system in the apparatus bay. And then basically, if we eliminate the radiant heat in the apparatus bay, we would be changing from a water-based system to an air-based system. It really wouldn't make sense to do the same system that was proposed with the radiant. So we get rid of the radiant heating, but we end up with a little bit more ductwork, a little bigger size ductwork, some different equipment. So all of that had to be factored in, and that was the narrative that the engineers put together in order for the cost estimators to price that. We looked at eliminating the 3 roof monitors that are over the apparatus bays and what that might entail. That similarly is something that they had to make some assumptions because that wasn't an engineered design. They had to make some assumptions about what steel would be replaced when you take out that roof monitor. You're taking out the framing for the monitor itself. You have to put some framing back in for the horizontal roof. There wasn't any design for that, and so they had to make some assumptions on what that would be. And then the base estimate includes the roofs being photovoltaic ready, which is what's required by the energy code. So we have to bring conduit to the roofs. We have to have the structure in place to carry the weight of photovoltaic cells on the roof, but we don't have to bring all the wiring, and we don't have to actually buy the panels if we don't want to. So we did ask the estimators to estimate what it would be to add the photovoltaic panels themselves. To be perfectly honest, that was something that came out of the reconciliation process, talking to them, and it was a little bit confusing at the time. So we have a number from TCI. PM&C didn't end up giving us a number in the end. I think they just misunderstood what we were saying. So we have one number for that to give you an idea. No, we can't use that. Okay. And then soft costs, and Tim will talk about this a little bit more when he's talking about the total project costs. But again, the soft costs are any project costs that are outside the scope of the contractor. So it's things like furniture, fixtures, and equipment, fees, architecture, engineering, OPM fees, commissioning, different expenses, materials during testing, and then a contingency to plan for the unknown for construction as well as for overall soft costs. You always want to carry a contingency as you head into construction. So the hard costs, the construction costs, plus the soft costs together equal the total project costs. So this is just a reminder of where we were at the schematic design point when we did the cost estimate. Let me grab a pointer here so we can see. Okay. So when we initially presented the cost estimate to you, these were the numbers that we were looking at in the budget range. So a lot of people remember from the construction estimate, we were looking at 30.9 million. But then we had a number of alternates that we were looking at that time, and we weren't sure what the committee would want to incorporate into the project. We also were carrying some estimates for some things related to the energy code that we might need, some added insulation, some triple glazed windows. We weren't sure at that point whether or not we were going to need them, so we put them as alternates so we could sort of track that. And then that gave us a range of total construction costs and some estimates, similarly ranges for soft costs, and we wound up with a range of the total project costs in 43 to 49.9 million. Then when we met with the committee, we selected some alternates that we wanted to incorporate into the project. And we know now, as we have progressed with our design, some of those things that we had carried for possibly needing to pass the energy code, we know we're going to need to wrap into the project. So we've gone ahead and we've just wrapped them into the project in this DD estimate and pulled them into this number. So with the things that we all agreed we were going to add to the project, I think it was the geothermal system, the geothermal heating system, the standing seam metal roof. We added triple glazed windows. We added some added insulation in the walls. There were some added, we have 11 parking spaces that are EV, electric vehicle charger ready, but then we decided to have 6 that actually were going to have the charging stations. So when we wrapped all of those costs in, we came up with 34.27 million for total construction at the end of schematic design. And then again, we had these ranges for soft costs, and that came down to a range of total project costs of 44.2 to 46.6. So that was, again, at the end of schematic design. Now we are moving into design development and where we are with these estimates. So in this first column here, this ST budget with alternates, that's what we just looked at. Just looking at the total construction estimate, we were looking at 34.27. After the reconciliation process with TCI and PMC, it was a really interesting process. The chief sat in on it. He got to hear what it's like.
It was the most interesting 3 hours of my life.
But there was a lot of back and forth between the estimators talking about the assumptions they made for quantities and unit costs. They each moved their numbers in some cases. There were times when they didn't agree with each other, and they both said, you know, I'll only go this far. This is the number I'm going to keep. This is what I'm seeing in the industry right now in the market. But you see, they came in the end with the reconciliation process and checking quantities and unit costs and all. They came very close to one another. Before we looked at any of the alternates, the design team's cost estimator, TCI, was at 33.34 million, and PM&C was at 33.28 million. So they were incredibly close to one another, and both of them under the base construction cost estimate that we had during schematic design. Below that base estimate come our alternates. So for the apparatus heating, to eliminate the radiant heat and to go with an air system in the apparatus phase, TCI estimated it was only going to be a savings of about $21,000. PM&C had it a little bit higher than that, $97,000. They talked a little bit, they were both very confident with their numbers. Neither one of them was going to budge on this to get any closer. I think, from talking to the engineer, he wasn't expecting it to be a big savings item, so I wasn't terribly surprised when I saw these numbers. The actual savings might be somewhere in between the two of those, but it's not a big ticket item. As I said, you eliminate the radiant heat, you save on some tubing, you're adding more ductwork, you're adding larger ductwork, you're adding some different equipment, and so that just increases the cost. For the roof monitors, you can see there's a bigger range in what they anticipated the savings was going to be. TCI put it at about $438,000. PM&C had it about $260,000. I think the range here, again, is just two things, really. They were guessing a little bit on the steel structure because there wasn't a design. They had to make assumptions about that. And they also, one of the things they agreed to disagree on was the cost of windows right now and what's going on in the market with the triple glazed windows. They talked about it. They both agreed that the cost had gone up, but one of them, PM&C, felt like it was leveling off a little bit. TCI felt like in the projects they were seeing, they were still seeing the costs climbing and the availability still not really up to meet market demand. And so they agreed to disagree on that. The price difference for those two. And then to add the photovoltaics back in, to add the panels back in, is about $275,000, according to the TCI estimate.
Madam Chair, question? So eliminating the roof monitors, there's no natural light in that big aircraft hangar of the apparatus bays.
Correct.
Meaning that we're going to have electric lights on almost 24/7?
So in the depth of the apparatus bay, correct. So there is some glazing in the doors, but that light isn't going to get past the trucks, and it's not going to go deep into the space.
Over the course of the life of the building, will this savings be, is this going to save us money versus putting the monitors in terms of energy costs, is my question.
I don't think we can say when we're, what the net savings would be over the life of the building. We haven't done a life cycle cost analysis. I know we have used strategies like this in other buildings. In the Ashland building, we have roof monitors. We have, in other buildings, we've put in clear stories or skylights. And I know, we've been in those buildings and seen times when they don't have the lights on because there's adequate natural light. I know, Chief, you've been to Ashland and you've talked to them about.
Yeah, so one of the things with Ashland, and I think it's, Amy's 100% right, but you also have to understand the back of the building's built into a hill.
That's
So they
right.
had nothing in the back, right? So they didn't really have much choice. We're not gonna have that issue, but we do have, the doors we have very small lights. They're not gonna, there's not much light coming in there. So it's not a whole lot different, but there was plenty, the day that we were in there was plenty of light coming in through those monitors.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely some savings, but I don't think we can quantify the savings of energy costs.
Okay.
Could I ask a question about the radiant heat in the apparatus bay? Generally, is that a more energy efficient heating system when you're not conditioning the space, you're heating the slab and the equipment and the people in the space?
Yeah.
So the air temperature could be 55, but you'll be comfortable. Is that not a more energy efficient and more comfortable?
I asked the HVAC engineer that question too, and again, without doing a full life cycle cost analysis, he was not willing to, commit one way or another. He felt like his gut was that they were pretty comparable, to be honest, in the energy efficiency. That they were both efficient systems. But we know that from an operations standpoint, we hear time and time again that fire departments really like to have the radiant heat because they're working on the floor and it's more comfortable for the people who are working in there than trying to heat all the air and in the space, yeah. So,
General question on the alternates. My assumption is, for the first two, the apparatus bay heating and the roof monitors, we would need to make a decision very quickly on
Yes.
those, because you need
Yes.
to move forward in one direction or another.
yes.
The solar photovoltaic, because you've got to do the wiring anyway, is there a little bit more time to sort that out? Or do you think you'd also need a decision very quickly on that?
I think there's time to sort out the photovoltaic, certainly. We have to make the roof solar ready, so we'll have conduit going up there. And we're planning for space, we're planning for weight. That could be added. It could be added during the project, it could be added, 2 years down the road, certainly.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to answer Mitch's. So myself and Lori Connors were having an animated discussion the other day about the need for the extra sidewalk. And she said, I'll tell you what, chief. She says, I'll write the grant to get you free photovoltaics, because there's this specific grant she knows. If you'll just stop bugging me about that. I said, wow. Maybe, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I think we had to agree to. So there is an alternative possibly for a grant to offset all of that. So I just wanted to make sure that was.
Yeah, yeah, I know there are a number of options for photovoltaic installation. There's a grant that would help us purchase them, and then the town owns those panels and gets 100% of it. There are also deals that municipalities and certainly schools, as we know in Northborough, work out with providers where we just sign a document that we get the power cheap, and they, a third party owns and operates the panels. So I anticipate there will be some select board discussion on photovoltaics on municipal buildings in general sometime in the near future. So how these all play together makes some sense. So I appreciate that there's.
And again, it's
some
nice not
flexibility
knowing
there.
that's not a big push. We don't have to, oh my goodness, make
Right.
that decision now.
Right.
So that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
So
Yeah.
do you want decisions on this now as we move along?
Or do you want to keep going and finish off?
We can keep going, I think, and talk about the overall cost. I think at this point, we need to pull up Tim's, I believe that, yes. You want to pull up the
Estimate comparison?
estimate comparison?
So I did pass it out.
Okay.
The financial status report, is that the one you're?
Well, there's one that's estimate analysis,
Yeah, I got that one.
and so really this just is kind of what we went through during the reconciliation meeting, so it looks like this one.
Yep.
Oh, no, it's not there.
It's one of these, which one
It's
is
the
it?
recon one.
It's not there. That's
Yeah,
not
no, down.
analysis, isn't there?
This one?
That's the high-low.
That's high-low.
That's the one you want right there, I think.
No, I don't think that.
Don't think so?
I think
I
I
think
should
it
have.
is.
No,
Oh,
it's not. Yeah,
not
you're
it.
right. Don't trust me. Yes. That's when I said
No.
first.
No, that's not,
That's
you
not
may
it.
not have been, this may have come after this,
Yeah. Yeah.
the cost range, but this one, there is a hard copy that each of you have. And
Okay.
basically, these are the different categories that we went through with the two different cost estimators. So it shows that in the columns A1,
Can I just-
B1, and
Add
C1.
one thing, just so everybody knows. We had quite a robust civil engineering conversation at the very beginning. The civil engineers were on board at that one. And the OSP, was he there? No.
No.
No, but the engineers were there, so that was complicated with the issues around the ground. So just so you know, this thing reflects that final conversation, and everybody sort of agreed that they were gonna do the base, so you should see some uniformity about that, correct, Tim? So, on some level.
Well, yeah, these are the end results on the
Yeah.
right-hand side.
Yeah.
This is where we began. So to continue, we began with columns A1, B1, and C1. So if you go down to the third page, you'll see that the estimates came in at, from TMNC at 35.1, and TCI was at 35.1 also. So they started off pretty close. But they had different numbers throughout, and throughout those discussions, and with the help of the design engineers to answer some questions or some things that maybe weren't clear to the estimators, numbers changed throughout. And it is a lengthy process, it's 3 hours or so, and sometimes they go all day. So this one, I feel like we did pretty good.
They were all enjoying themselves. I don't know, I'm just.
Your head's spinning. But in the end, as Amy indicated, we came off with at the bottom of column A and B, you'll see where PMNC was 33.28 and TCI was 33.34. So the idea isn't for the estimators to agree on what things necessarily cost. The idea is to agree on the scope of work. When you put this out to bid, you're not going to get all your bidders to agree on the same cost. They're going to give it their estimate, and there's going to be a range. And the idea of these cost estimators is not to come in at where the low guy is going to be, not to come in where the high guy is going to be, but their goal is to come in right in the middle. If you had 5 bidders, that this would be right in the middle of that range of 5 bidders that you had. Because really, we want them to have see the the project, the scope the same, so that when the estimator, or when the bidders are bidding on it, they're all seeing the same, and so we get apples to apples comparisons. So we're not trying to convince one estimator to lower his unit cost on this or increase your unit cost on that. We just want to make sure that, that they're seeing it the same way. And apparently they are. And when documents are clear and the details are clear, you don't have those discrepancies and you don't have those wide swings. So this is really promising for, based on where we are in design, the fact that the two estimators can come up with a number that close. You know, granted, we still have a design contingency, but that's because the design isn't completed yet. So there are some numbers on the alternates, but when we compare this to where we were coming out of our, in our kind of cost range spreadsheet, so you could take a look at this guy that I passed out as well. So we made some changes along the way. We added in the geothermal system, and we tried to update this as you know, as requested. So the last time it was updated was in the middle of April. And so now, with the new estimates, we tried to do an apples to apples comparison, and as Amy had indicated, some costs moved from alternates into the base scope. So some numbers shifted around a little bit, but if you look at the bottom of page 1, we had that range where we're saying, okay, for total construction of a 34 to 35.5, let's say, you know, $1.5 million swing in a range, which is pretty tight for a $30 million job. We ended up, after the most recent estimate, with, again, a range of 33.4 to 34.1 for construction, again, about that $1.5 million range. So the construction cost shifted a little bit, it went down, but the range stayed about the same. And if you go through the soft costs that Amy talked about, those costs were pretty consistent. It was just where maybe some things got added. You know, we know that we have some borings going on and some test pits going on, so there's a cost for that we added some dollars in, and we put in a placeholder in case they hit something that we need to account for. So that needs to be in there, and so there's a range for those items. But in the end, on the bottom of page 3, you'll see that our cost range back in April was about 43 to 45.7, and now we're at 41.9 to 44.1. So a similar spread, a similar range. You know, went down a little bit on the high side, went down a little bit on the low side. So it's trending in the right direction. Part of that is when they're estimating early on in schematic, again, you're going off of narratives, you're going off of basic floor plans, and estimators by nature are kind of conservative. So as they have more that they can actually put a value to, the costs get more defined, and you see that the cost might come down a little bit at this phase. As we go forward, hopefully they stay the same, that they don't move too much, but between schematic design and design development is when you see the costs kind of move more than at other phases, just because of that very schematic design that they're starting with. Now a lot of the systems are defined and the spaces are defined, and now it's really just tweaking those details and maybe putting in actual details for maybe some of the systems, the structural steel, for instance, that we don't have a fully designed structure yet, but they know the sizes, they know the kind of where it should be based on a square footage, how much tonnage they should have for this type of a project. So we're anticipating that these costs will kind of level out throughout. except for potential changes or things that we have to add to cover something that may come up that we know about, like adding a sidewalk or something like that.
Madam Chair, question. Tim, you got a line item for hazmat removal. Do you estimate of the total earth that's got to be moved or removed, what percentage of that might be considered hazardous?
So we talked to the engineers a lot about this on that call, too. They thought there was a 28 ton, 28 cubic, 28,000 cubic yards, which equates to a certain amount of tonnage, that overall might need to be, is in excess on the site. And so we said, well, where exactly is that coming from? And so we determined that a lot of it is coming from cutting into the hillside. Some of it is cutting into other areas where we don't anticipate hitting hazardous material. But we wanted to verify, and so that's why we had the LSP go out there and do some digging to verify that. But we said, okay, as a placeholder, let's carry 5,000 cubic yards as a potential for hazardous material. You know, it's probably a conservative number, but at least we're carrying something, and that's where our numbers are generated from. So that, I believe, is, and we'll have to just verify what's in the, we just got the estimates in on Friday afternoon, so we're putting it together quickly, but we also have the costs of the LSP and some other costs, so that's kind of where we have some of the costs in the estimates themselves, and then other costs that we're going to incur.
And
A lot of testing that goes on.
Of the earth that will be removed, that's not hazmat, will X percent of that be returned? Do we anticipate? Or it's gone?
We're anticipating that it's going to be gone.
Okay. 28,000 yards in total. Okay.
Yeah, anything that we remove, if we had to remove something where we need to build back up the material again, hopefully that we'd be able to use on-site material to build that back up, but that's not been finalized or determined yet.
Okay.
Certainly where there was remediation done in the past, they dug down about 7 feet is what we're hearing. And they filled it, but they didn't fill it at 6-inch lifts and compact it as they went. They didn't use structural fill, they just used common fill. So that is part of the material that may have to be removed and then put back in, compacted, and make sure that it can support the weight of the building.
Okay.
Tim, while you're speaking of the excavation, alternate number 1, over excavation of fill instead of ground improvements, what is that all about? On the 3rd page of the analysis.
Oh, wrong sheet, sorry. So that was when we thought there might be a way to do geopiers instead of removing and reinforcing replacing all the fill with structural fill. But it didn't seem like that was a viable option after talking to the engineers at our reconciliation meeting. It sounded like it was probably going to be a better option to remove the material under the building and build it back up. What we're hoping is that based on where that we find that they did the backfill after remediation previously, that when we go back in for the building, all we would need to do is go back and take out that material and never dig down deeper into material that may have been impacted at one time that meets the clean standard of DEP, but isn't something that maybe we would want to dig into. So if we can minimize export of any material that had been impacted previously, we would like to, and just build back up what had been placed as fill, just to fill the hole.
So if the slab is at 302, are you saying that we're at 295 with filled material in some areas?
Generally, yes. So we have to go down, in our deepest part of, it looks like our deepest part of excavation that we're gonna need, be putting the material in is the infiltration systems. So those are 3 or 4 feet below grade, and there's probably a foot of stone below them, and so they could go down maybe 5, and that's below subgrade, and then you have probably 8 inches of process under your parking lot. So those are probably down 6 feet or so. Where your footings were probably gonna be frost wall, so 4 feet down, 4 to 5 feet down.
But we have to excavate down because of the fill that's there.
And then
But-
structurally compact it,
Yeah.
and then place your footings.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when we were initially looking at it, we thought the aggregate piers might be the way to go because of the potential hazardous material. We could leave the soil on site, install the aggregate piers as a ground improvement method. And so when we did the first pass at the estimates, the estimators were assuming aggregate piers as the base bid, or that's what we told them to assume. Sort of towards the tail end of their estimating effort, we discovered, because of the elevation of where the glacial till is and the elevation of this non-compacted material, and had more conversations with the LSP and everything, we quickly decided that the aggregate piers probably weren't the way to go. So that was the adjustment that was made through the reconciliation process to have everyone on board with over-excavating.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if hopefully, if we only need to go down 5 feet, then there would only need to go down an extra 2 to get to natural grade.
Right.
Question. Back to the hazmat materials removal, there's a range of 102 to 500,000. When does that become more defined? Or is that during construction, basically, it's a contingency item?
No, well, we hope it doesn't go to construction before we find out. So we have Rob Berger from Capital Environmental, and he was out there digging some test pits in where we're going to be doing the infiltration systems, which are our deeper cuts. And so that's where we're anticipating kind of a worst-case scenario. Not to say that something might pop up somewhere, but we're trying to target where he's digging and to try and identify any of that now.
Just to give you a timeline on that, Tim, if I could, Scott and I were talking today, and I sent you guys an email from Scott. Rob Berger actually said, these are where I need the test pits. So we need PAR to go out and stake them, and then DPW's all set. They're going to go out there, we're going to dig them, Rob's going to be there, going to test them all right then.
Okay, good. So we'll know
We're
that.
hoping next week that we get that done.
Good.
We're hoping to get enough information so that, we can all get together, the design team, Colliers, Rob, we can get together and we can make assumptions based on what we need to cut out of the site, what we need to remove from the site, a quantity that we want to own in the construction documents for hazardous materials.
Right.
We'll never know until we start digging during construction. There might be some unforeseen conditions, that would change the ultimate cost, but we want to have our best assumption going into the bid documents for what might be removed.
And the way Rob identified where he wanted the test pits were based on the borings that were done previously. So he said, these are the areas, well, 2 things, based on where the borings were done and based on where PAR said the infiltration systems were going to be. So once he got a good hold of that, he figured out where they were, and that's where we're sitting.
So you anticipate that this number will become a known number to a reasonably solid extent?
Yes, so we didn't
Well
want to carry
before that.
28,000 cubic
Right.
yards
Right.
as hazardous
Yeah.
material. Because then you're talking $3.5 million or
Yeah.
more. So we tried to say that, okay, some of the areas where he wants to dig and there's an infiltration system, we're going to be cutting that just to get down to the parking lot level quite a bit. So, and it's up on the hill, so we're not expecting to find anything there.
Yeah.
But better to dig a hole and verify
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah, no, I agree with the process, it makes.
Yeah,
makes
and
a
so
lot of
it's
sense.
really, I think, maybe those ones closer to the street lot side is
Yeah.
where we're, more worried. Or there was, I guess, a former residential garage up on the hill on one of the adjacent properties.
At 10 Monroe.
Monroe, yeah.
So I just want to, if, we understood that, people were working on their cars in there, that there wasn't any kind of, residential kind of dumping or
Yeah.
leakage.
Yeah.
So we're even digging up there too.
Great. Yeah.
Mitch, there's work to be done to
Yeah.
pull this all together,
Right.
and there's a risk
Yes.
involved in all of this, so we'll set this number best of our ability, and then we'll have unit costs and the specs and everything
Good.
that'll guide
Yeah.
up or down, because it could go down.
Right, right.
We're likely
So
to
we,
go
we,
up.
and we'll define the unit costs.
Yeah, we'll
ahead
work
of
with
time.
people to define it, we
Yeah.
don't pull that out of.
Right, no,
And
I-
they don't, and
Mean,
then-
mean, we're not, we're going, it's gonna be in the bid specs as opposed to the general contractor putting in a number. Because I've seen it done both ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure of Mass General Law right now what they allow. I think
Okay.
unit costs are a little bit dicey.
Okay, all right, we'll figure, that's subject for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good, and then, the other question I have right now is, I see the PV in the total project, cost, the project budget sheet in there, that it's, down from 576.6 down to 275 to, well, 275, yeah, I don't know where I got 276 from. So that's good. My other question is, looking through this now, I don't see the two potential deduct alternates represented here in the low range. Are they in there at the? or-
You know what, they're not.
Okay,
That's an oversight. We
Okay.
could add those.
so in theory, the low is another $350,000 or so lower than that,
Yes.
subject to decisions that we make. Okay. All right. Good. Those are the only questions I have right now, Chair.
Do we want to decide on the other two alternates?
Do you have more presentation, or do you want us to talk about the decisions now? for
We don't
the-
have any more on cost, so we have other things to present, certainly. We want to talk about the apparatus bay heating and the roof monitors.
That's what I was
and-
saying we
yeah.
want to do now. Okay.
I think we might as well do it now. And then move forward with anything else. Opinion to start.
I mean, I have lots of opinions. On the apparatus bay heating, I think we should keep the heating the way that it is in the project and not pull that out. That's my own opinion. I think it's, relatively not a lot of money to do it. Everything that I have heard here and elsewhere is that it's much appreciated by the staff that will be working there. I don't see there being, I've always heard that this is more energy efficient than what would be there instead, but I would trust you to know that more than I do.
Well, I've
so-
done churches
Yeah.
with radiant floors.
Yeah,
With 45-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
And they're much appreciated because it warms the pews and your
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
And their heating costs were dramatically less.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you haven't done the costing, life cycle costing of it, but I would certainly be in favor of radiant floors because 6 months of the year, it's going to be cold environment. And it makes a big difference to be comfortable so you can be efficient, effective, working on the equipment. And I'm all in favor of the radiant heat.
yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
for ways to save money. I don't think this is a justifiable savings to me.
Go to him
Chief.
first.
Oh, he can't vote.
He
but
can
could
still have his
talk.
opinion.
Would you like to talk?
I would, thank you, Madam Chair. I think the monitors bringing,
Can we keep it to the
We're
bid,
still-
make a vote on that, and
Okay.
then the next one?
I think that makes logical sense to keep it,
So speaking from both.
especially for such a large footprint.
I'm going to speak from two different aspects. And one is a firefighter that spent many years on the floor versus a chief who wants to keep his firefighter happy, which is kind of almost the same thing. I can tell you, I spent many years on the floor with regular overhead heating. When those doors opened up, it took forever for the base to warm back up. Okay, I can tell you the radiant heat stations that we're at, much nicer. When the doors shut down, the floors are hot, it's comfortable. So from a firefighter perspective, that way. Today's a great example. The guys are still picking up from that fire they're at. When the time they get back, they will have probably been on the floor get back, cleaned up, they will have been on the apparatus floor for probably 15 hours today. If this was the middle of the winter, there you go. To me, that kind of says it all.
I agree with everybody's opinion, so.
So I'll make a motion that we go with the radiant floor heating.
Here, a second.
I'll second.
Yes. No.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
That was easy.
Okay, that brings us to the roof
Necessary.
monitors.
Go ahead.
As I said, I've got opinions on everything. I think a little bit differently about the roof monitors. I think there is significant value to having natural daylight in there. If I was in there, I would rather have natural light. $260,000 to $438,000 is a lot of money. We have to put the lighting in anyway, and the lighting is gonna be there the majority of the time, because there's more nighttime than daylight. So it's not a hill that I wanna die on, but my preference would be to remove the roof monitors. From a more minor perspective, I think from the outside aesthetically, I think the building would look a little bit sharper without the roof monitors. To me, they're a visual distraction. But, as I said, it's not a hill that I'm willing to die on.
I'm not gonna give you an opinion on the monitors yet, but I have a question for Amy and Janet. The intent was where those monitors, that's where the PV panels would go. If we get rid of those, does that increase the cost of installing PV panels on the roof or not? Or complicate it in any way? I don't know, that's why I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, you can put PV on flat roofs, so I don't know if there would be a cost difference one way or
Some kind of a
another,
rack
but, yeah.
But there's a frame, and then there's ballast
Yeah.
to hold
Yeah.
the system, and you'd have to design that into your
Yeah.
structure.
The roof monitors, we're gonna have standing seam, and there are clips that go on
Yeah,
the standing
perfect.
seam, so that's an easy system, but there'll be, it would be a ballasted
But in the
system
flat
of some
roof, it's
sort.
not standing seam, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you'd have this, like you said, it'll be a rack pitch. So,
I would imagine, I think I may have asked this question when the solar study folks were here, that if we have an entirely flat roof, it provides a little bit more flexibility for solar that we, in theory, might be, and I'm not, this isn't justifying it for me at all. Just thinking about that question, there's more surface area, flat surface area, maybe we could have more photovoltaic panels on the roof, maybe.
Yeah,
But maybe not.
potentially, yeah. I mean, we have to, in the construction documents, sort of outline where we're planning for solar to be in the future and engineer around that. So if you weren't going to put it in right now, we might increase that area.
Could we increase the natural light by adding additional windows in the rear? Or clear story, or
Not much
transoms, or,
Yeah,
no?
There's not much room on that
Because
wall. to
it's all
really-
doors on two sides.
a small
it's-
panel, I don't
Yeah.
know, any idea what that would be, a couple feet?
Probably a couple feet. I mean, the portals for also, it's all poured in place concrete.
Well, that's
or-
true,
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
So
there would be
that's-
some
there
structural
would be some
implications.
structural implications of adding clear stories.
That's a structural thing
Yeah.
we're doing,
The
so.
folding doors, have operators above the doors too, so once you have your 14-foot door, and then you have the operator and all, and then you come down from the roof with the parapet and all, there's just not a lot of room left. So,
Dan?
I'm a fan of the roof monitors. I think the natural light during the day would make a big difference. And being a dad, I'm always shutting off lights as it is in the fire station. So,
You don't need that on.
so, but I understand it's a big, well, it's also a big difference between 259 and 438. I mean, are we thinking it's gonna come in higher or lower or somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle. I think.
Somewhere in the middle?
If you used 350 as a,
Yeah, that was the number that ended up getting into the final there.
Yeah.
That's just splitting the difference.
basically.
Yeah.
so,
I'm interested to see what this guy has to say.
Well, I don't think you'll be able to see the roof monitors from the street because of the height of the building, and the monitors would be recessed back. So if you're walking and driving by, I don't think that's
Okay.
so much of a concern. I agree that natural light would be great, but $350,000, yeah,
Can-
I'm torn.
can I throw something out there? We have 3 roof monitors right now. We could have 2 roof monitors. We could have one in the middle of the building. We could look at other alternatives.
Smaller.
Geez,
We
I
could do smaller, we could do.
believe I had that
smaller.
conversation somewhere. So I'm going to, go ahead, John, I'll let you go first.
I think the idea of reducing the number of monitors may help, but I think bringing natural light into that large aircraft hangar makes sense, and there's a certain amount of passive solar coming in through there. So I think it makes logical sense. If we can bring the number down, it may make it more palatable.
I hadn't thought about the idea of reducing the number. Do you think it would be roughly proportional? So there are 3 roof monitors, they're probably around 120,000 each if it's 350, 360 by the time you're done?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably not a great economy of scale there. I think it's probably,
Yeah, very close, and maybe we looked at a little narrower, a little length too, and, you know, we were pretty good about covering them so that they got the maximum benefit of it, but we could look at alternates and still pull light in, you know.
So it's northern light coming in, the south-facing, John,
Right.
would be the solar panels.
Right.
So you wouldn't get any solar gain
Yeah,
from the windows.
okay.
Because they're facing the other direction.
Okay.
But it's the best quality light in terms of full spectrum.
Right, agreed.
And for color understanding and so forth, and for health.
But maybe if you had one that was a little larger, as opposed to 3, I don't know.
We'll look at that.
Yeah.
You know, if
I
you
don't,
do
I
decide.
don't, I don't know if we'd go larger, because.
Then it gets
it's-
taller.
Wider?
It would get
Wider?
taller. It's pretty wide, it has pretty good coverage across the
size now.
apparatus bays right now.
Look at
So what I'm
2,
hearing
I
too
look
is-
at 2 that were a little shorter. That would be mine. Not the giraffes, but that's what I
I want to hear your opinion first.
My opinion is, look at 2. I think that going with 1 isn't going to be enough. But compromise at 2. Somebody that, and it's not comparable to being in a fire station every day, but I had a dancing school room in one of my schools, and I was in the dark, and it was all light as far as electricity, and it was depressing. So when I moved to this new school, the most important thing to me was I get to teach in the room with the window. So,
Well, when you're the
like I
owner,
said,
you can do
it's not a real comparison, but it's a comparison to the fact that I think there needs to be natural light. Chief?
I have to tell you, when I sat through this and I saw that number, I went, "Oof, that's hard. It's hard not to say, get rid of it, that saves us X amount of dollars. But then I sit there through planning board and I hear, let's add 150 foot of sidewalk, and it's only gonna cost us $100,000. That's pennies. Well, I'm like,
Okay.
okay, so now I find myself, well, that's pennies on a large project, what are we talking about? So I think that your idea of reducing the number would save us some of those pennies, but also it would meet both of our, both objectives, right? It would save some money, which I think, and again, when I saw that, in fact, the number I think I originally saw was 5 something was the original number, and my heart stopped. I'm like, how can you say no to that? How can you, you can't, I couldn't. But if it's gonna be that middle, at least closer to the middle, I'm okay with that. I think that makes sense.
So they would be probably positioned towards the center of the apparatus bay, and then the perimeter, you'd get some light from the doors.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We
Yeah, I'd be
take a look at it. We're
Favor of 2, yeah, I like
Logical
that.
sense.
Favor of 2.
So do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we go for the 2 option for the roof monitors.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay.
Okay.
The questions in.
I gotta tell you, when I saw that number, I was like,
Yeah, the old number was, what, 546 for the monitors? Yeah.
Ouch.
It's so interesting to see the discrepancy, and naturally I was drawn more towards the discrepancy on the monitors because it's a big dollar value. But then I realized, I looked again at the apparatus bay heating, it's almost quadruple between a smaller dollar value, but
Right.
that would have been an interesting meeting to observe. I don't need to be there by any means. I have
Some of these-
nothing to add.
Some of these line item numbers,
Yeah.
the comparisons, you could drive a truck through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of it is the way they group things together. Sometimes, you know, one guy's got it in this line, and the other guy's got it over in this line, I think. Anyway,
They do a lot of switching during our meetings.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of maneuvering going on during those meetings so that they can have an apples to apples.
Yeah.
Why are we so far apart? Well, I carried that in sight. Well, let's move it into electrical and, you know, and so they do a lot of that. But, yeah, if they weren't both on the line, sharing their screens or something like that, it would be impossible to follow.
Okay. So we had a few design items we wanted to talk to you about. One is the site sign. So everyone remembers that the zoning board did not approve the request for an LED sign element in the site sign. Let me grab my pointer again here. Point to things. So this is what we had presented originally to the zoning board and to the committee as well. We had this masonry base for the sign. We have the Northborough Fire Department and the street address and this element on top of the sign. And then there was this electronic sign element. And we had to go to the zoning board and they declined our request for that. So we need to look at an alternative. What we had suggested was that we still bring power out to that location, so if zoning changes at some point in the future, you have the opportunity to put a sign in, but we need to fill that gap in the meantime.
Plus, it gives us a light that we want to, if we want to put a light on the sign as well.
Yeah, yeah, so we definitely have the light out there for the sign. So we looked at, what could we do that could be a removable panel in the future that you could take out and put an electronic sign back? So we have one option here where we have a panel that we put the town seal on. That was one option. And then the other option that we wanted to show you, oh, it's not going to let me do it when I have my laser pointer.
Giant whiteboard.
Big whiteboard, go out there and write on it.
Was a panel with a Maltese cross, which is a symbol of fire departments. So we had those two thoughts for this, and we wanted to run those by you, what you thought.
The town seal has a library. The roof is odd. It's not correct. And it
Oh,
drives
the
me
seal
crazy.
doesn't match- About that. It doesn't match the real roof?
No, it's incorrect the way it's rendered.
Okay,
The hip roof doesn't look like that.
delightful in a way.
Yeah, so
This will not
I would go for the multi-cross.
I like the seal better.
I'd
But-
like to
but-
see if
but-
they could correct the roof.
All right.
There we go.
What do you think of
We
that
want the
hip roof?
seal.
It's cockeyed. I mean, it's,
We never,
The
well, we wouldn't have
geometry's
noticed
wrong.
that, we wouldn't have noticed
Yeah.
that, but.
Yeah, I've looked at this picture for years and years and years and never noticed it. Still
Have to
don't
walk
see
out
it.
and take a look.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of the committee? Do we need this?
sign.
Yeah.
A building sign?
It says Northborough Fire Department on the top of the building.
We require every building in town to put a 911 address on the front of their building or on a sign in front of their building. So it either goes on the building somewhere or it goes on the
Goes on
sign.
this.
I can't waive it for myself, I'm not going to waive it for anybody else.
Understand, okay, all right.
I had another thought,
Yep.
which is get rid of, I'm just gonna point at it on here, because I have a couple things. Just get rid of this piece entirely and
Put it
have
in there.
Northborough Fire Department address just there. And if we ever put an LED sign, then we build that up. I don't know. We're trying to fill a space where there was something good designed there before. I don't think we're gonna come up with something that's justifiable to put there.
Yeah, I think that,
It's filling
when
space.
we looked at the sign design before, we were trying to pick up the arches on the building, and we were trying to pick up some of the masonry coursing, accent bands and the stone base, elements that we were using in the architecture of the building as well. And that's how we came to that design.
I'd be honest with you, Mitch.
Yeah.
I don't think that would look good.
Okay, yeah, could be right. Yeah, I following up on.
What goes in the center, I don't know, but I
Yeah,
just don't
yeah,
think.
I feel like we're trying to solve a problem that we should probably change the question. We're not putting an LED sign there. Yeah, someday maybe we would. Someday I think we will put a sign downtown someplace.
Technology may change.
Yeah.
That is acceptable to the code.
Yeah, well, we'd have to change the code, and my gut feeling is we probably will, because I think it does make sense for the municipality to be able to have an LED sign somewhere downtown. I sort of feel like we should solve that problem when it comes up and have something simpler here that makes sense for what it is. I still like the idea of at least bringing conduit out there, bringing enough power to light it.
So you're saying leave a hole there?
No, I'm saying change that entirely.
Of change the sign
The
entirely?
whole brick, get rid of, my opinion, get rid of the brick, have a simpler sign that is a beautiful Northborough Fire Department sign with the address. Like, that's its purpose. This was built clearly to frame a nice LED sign with the fire department sign on top. As that, this is a really nice sign. We're not doing what was really the main feature of this. I don't know why we should keep everything around it that framed that nice feature.
Feelings? Dan?
I'm more of an in the department kind of thing. So it's really not, I like the Maltese cross, because clearly Tom is the, the library seal, which I've never, ever noticed before.
Now I won't be able to unnotice it.
Everybody will be
will
out
when you
there
drive
looking at
home.
it.
Look at it, you can see it, that's what he means.
I'm good with whatever gets decided upon. I'm good with a sign,
Any kind of sign?
any kind of sign. I think it's important to have a sign. I know we're gonna have the large lettering over the doors, and I get that, but I think a sign.
With the address
Yeah.
on it, and I agree, and I think we could do a simple wooden sign for that matter.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't have to be,
Yeah, something that will last.
Yeah, wood is,
No.
no.
That's one thing our department, we really don't have. We have the sign right over the door, that's it, currently.
go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, do you have any
I
ideas?
think it's a great-looking sign, but the pride of place now is a void.
Yeah.
It's-
You of course said it better than me. Yeah.
So what to put there?
Yeah.
Can we leave it as is and still on this central component, whether it's a Maltese cross or a revised town logo or whatever?
For a later discussion, sure.
Sure,
Does that make sense?
sure.
I mean,
Or
just
do you
long
wanna
as we
change
get
it
it into the drawings,
Or-
at the
yeah.
end.
Or do something simpler?
If you think of anything that you think can go in there, because we are, yeah.
I think we were thinking that perhaps you might be putting an electronic sign there sooner rather than later too, right? You know, something to think about is the possibility of an electronic sign a couple of years down the road
Or
or
20 years.
20 years down the road.
So
'Cause
we'd
you'd
have to
hate
get
to
a
build them.
variance
Yes.
from the sign
We need-
bylaw
We need a change to the bylaw.
or get a
Or
variance.
get a variance, one or the other.
Through the
It would need to be a
ZBA.
use variance, and the zoning board was pretty, yeah, and I'm not a fan of use variances myself, as I embarrassed myself saying at town meeting.
A change in sign is a use variance?
An electronic sign they are prohibited. And a variance, you can't do a variance, you'd actually, I don't remember the details, you were at the zoning board meeting.
They could have approved a variance.
If, it would have been a use variance,
But
yes.
but they, I think they voted 3-2
Yes, it was one,
Yeah.
within one vote, so it was close.
to not approve it.
Yeah.
And, do I see it changing sooner than later? Yeah, I see it changing sooner than later, but it could be 3 years, it could be 15 years.
Right, I think there are two questions, and they both go outside of this room, outside of the people in this room, which is, one, I think the bylaw would need to change, and I think the bylaw should change to allow the municipality to place one electronic sign in the downtown area. And then step two would be, where should that be? And a number of people have made the argument that I see some justification to is, maybe this location isn't the best location. It's close to being central, but maybe it's not quite central enough. There's the Lions Club sign, which is broken half the time, but it's in a pretty central location. Maybe the town would replace it with one of their own, maybe we'd find another spot instead to put something there. And again, that's outside of this room, but those are the discussions that would need to take place before we do it. Now, obviously, if we have a spot here, hey, it makes it a little bit easier, but I still don't know if enough people would say this is really the right, like, if we had already built this building and someone said, hey, how about an electronic sign? Would we immediately say, oh, no, we should really put it 1,000 feet outside of downtown? Or should we put it right where everybody sees it? I don't know.
What, do you want my opinion?
Always.
I unfortunately have to agree with Captain Brawlhart. And what I mean by that is, it does not matter to me. There should be I'm gonna tell you, there has to be a sign with a number on it. or it has to be big enough on the building that it's viewable from the street. That's what the code says, that's what it's gotta be. Whether we do one or the other,
I think it's a good idea to have a sign that's perpendicular to the road. I think that helps with visibility. So we should have that, you know, I mean, Dawn, you suggested a wooden sign, I would, you know, maybe a slate sign or but something like what I suspect you mean.
It's something simple.
Yeah.
Nighttime.
what?
Unfortunately, you had to.
Unfortunately, I had to agree with you, I'm sorry, Cap, I normally don't agree.
The town buildings don't have an actual, there's no continuity of signs, the
There is
town
none.
hall, the
There's
police
been talk of
department.
it.
There's
So, I mean,
some
if there could be
discussion.
something that someone could come up with, maybe there could be a continuity of the town buildings and they all
Yeah.
get a similar sign, or.
So, let me ask this question. Is it possible to run the electricity out to where this sign is currently located? Leave it, cap it, it's there. And come back at a later date after the select board or whoever makes the decision of what those signs will look like, design the sign and put it in at that point in time.
So you're talking about at that point, no sign?
We put the number on the building, I'll put the number on the doors. I'm trying to get past this, and I don't know if we're gonna get past it if we just sit here and go back and forth.
So are you, so then leave it blank.
Do it as an alternate.
I think my opinion, we should have a sign. I am okay I think my suspicion is if we say it's a simpler sign, a wood, slate, something like that sign, that design could probably be deferred for a long time. You probably don't, you would need to know the materials and so forth, but maybe not the visual design of it right away.
Well, we would want to include it in the construction document, so we would work on some alternates.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm bringing this up, Mitch, if I
Yeah.
may, is that design review was quite adamant.
Yeah.
That we not do this sign, and we do whatever the select board comes up with and says, this is what we want for our standard sign for municipal.
And I don't know
Our
when
argument
that
back
will
to them
happen.
was,
Yeah.
this is already designed, this project's already underway.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense to go back, but now that we're talking about removing this,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea for us tonight to come up with a concept of what the sign would look like, other than the typography, if you will, and maybe the color. And I don't know, I don't have the answer for how to figure out the rest of it. I think we should have more visual consistency among municipal buildings. I don't know if there are any two that have the same type of sign, so there's zero. I'd almost say, look around for the nicest one and copy it, and I don't know which that is.
So if I could.
I don't know.
Just raise a couple of other issues to think about. One thing is that we've had to present sign options through the permitting process.
Yeah.
So with planning board, we're meeting with the planning board again, and that has been part of the discussion, part of the requirements for the submission. The other thing, if we just have the sign on the building, so this sign was gonna be lit. On the building, the letters aren't gonna be lit, so it won't be as visible at night.
It's sitting 50-plus feet back off the road.
Yeah, and I do believe.
Completely, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to do is not hang up this committee for 45 minutes on a sign,
Yeah.
is my point.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're hearing no one's comfortable with this sign or signing off on this sign, these options tonight. So I think let us go back to the drawing board and
Yeah,
propose a couple
except
of
the
other
planning board
options.
is going to meet beforehand, and they
Well,
want to
that's
know
true.
what we're doing. They wanted to know if we were going to keep the sign.
That's right.
Which would have a hole in it, because it would have the LED out. And we have to make it the choice. Are we going to say yes to that?
Planning board
That's what we're going to put.
is the 18th, right?
Yes,
I believe.
soon. I assume we need to-
Have concerned that they need to know the details
Yep.
of the sign design?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, you have to submit it.
Okay.
So we either submit the whole, because we've just taken the LED out, or we submit something with something in it, or we say we're taking the sign out completely or something. I don't know if you want to do that. That I'm not sure you want to do, taking it out completely.
I understand.
What's the cost of the sign approximately, do we know?
I just looked at one of the estimators had it at 25,000. No, I don't know if that's just a placeholder, but,
As a placeholder.
yeah, I mean, you know.
This one,
But
I
it's
think
not.
more.
You know, if you had something simpler where you had just a pedestal, if you will, for a signage of some type, And so without the piers that go further up, maybe you can just, where that centerpiece is just a sign that has what it has up top. It still has some brick to it, it still ties to the building, but it's simpler, probably less expensive, have the conduit out there, so if you ever wanted to change it later, you could put take that off and add something to your masonry, base. I don't know, I would just say that maybe you can send some sketches around electronically for people to, I don't know. When is it, the
Really-
18th that we have?
Really can't vote on
We
it,
have
but
to have it by the
Vote,
11th.
yeah.
how about if we just go with the concept that was just presented and say we're agreeing with that? And
The concept of the lower platform
Yeah.
that Tim just said.
go with the concept and you design it and the chief will look at it and say yes or no.
I do want to caution though, the chance of reusing a base, depending on how you design it, is pretty slim. I mean, if you design something and then you take a slab off of it and you take the slab, Mark's designing it right now, and then you try to add to it, you've got to build that structure early. Because I've done some big street signs and, you got to think about them. They're not like just sticking 2 posts in the ground. It's not that simple. So if you're doing something like that with the intent of using it, might not work. That's all I'm saying. So, having done it.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of something that still
I know,
ties
I
to your
agree.
building.
It sounds great, but
And
it's,
just move it.
Of the apartment patch, I thought about that too.
yeah.
Putting the patch on there and having a Maltese cross.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, if you don't do this sign now, it won't get done.
Yep.
It will-
And you're going to get some less than ideal solution. So I would say,
Go with it.
keep this design, and we can play with this center panel with the hopes of a future LED, but in the interim would be some other symbol.
And I think the patch was a good idea, but we could discuss what's going to go on it later.
Whoever designed that did an amazing job.
Yeah, I don't,
Will the planning board want to know what
Unfortunately, I do
design's
agree with
going
you.
on it?
Well, if you tell the planning board this is what we're doing and we're gonna decide on the center,
That we've discussed various options, the patch, the Maltese cross,
Okay.
Patch,
be
multi-
something related to the fire department.
If someone wants to redesign a town seal, maybe that. with
Oh,
a
geez,
correct-
don't do the town seal.
In the effort of moving along, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we go with this sign with the middle portion being our patch.
A second.
you were full of motions today.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I don't know how we turned that around.
You okay with that?
Also not a hill I'm going to die on.
So we wanted to show you some tower options. So we had been talking before about the tower design and possibly tweaking it, adjusting it a little bit. The training tower, lowering it a little bit, we did lower it a little bit. It's complicated, there's a lot going on in there. Operationally, for the way the fire department uses it, we've been looking at that a little bit more. We've been doing some sketches of some options. We haven't run them by the department yet. We were hoping actually after the meeting to pull you aside and show you a couple little sketches about how the hose might hang in there. There are structural requirements for framing it. It's a challenge because of the height of it, how to frame it all structurally. Trying to get the masonry coursing to work and become a unifying element between the two different pieces of the building with the heavy trim bands that we see over the folding doors at the apparatus bays, and then the trim band that we see with the arch over the main entrance and everything, and trying to unify them where they join in this tower. All of those things have been a challenge. If we have a clock, if we don't have a clock, what the window openings might look like, what the roof overhang and roof pitch might look like. We've been looking at all of that, and we have 5 different options to show you tonight and talk about a little bit. So this one is most similar to what you have been seeing. We did bring the base material, this contrasting dark masonry, up a little bit higher than what you had been seeing before. We felt like that really worked better with the overall proportions of the tower. That picks up on the band that turns into the arch over the folding doors. We have tried to pick up some other elements, this recessed brick course that connects all of the windows around the building, continues across the tower, and then continues and picks up the line of the mullion in the folding doors, and then a continuous recessed brick course around the rest of the building. We have the lower base over on this part of the building. There's a line here that continues across. In this option, we kept the contrasting metal panel up in the upper part of the tower, that we have the same material that we have around the folding doors, and we have a little bit on the main entrance under the arch there. And we created this vertical panel, trying to pick up on some of the verticality of some of the punched window openings, but we're repeating those window openings in pattern in the tower with a metal panel in between it. We have a contrasting masonry band with an arch over the windows here, and then we have the clock up above. And you can get a sense of what that looks like in the 3D views here. And that was study number 1.
Any questions on number 1?
I've got 5 I'm going to show, and then we have one slide that has them all next to each other, which makes
Oh,
it
one of
much...
those,
like-
one of those village things.
Right. Makes it a little easier to evaluate them all. So one of the things we had been looking at was, again, how these two bands of differing heights, these heavy trim bands, meet at the tower. And here we tried to resolve that by continuing this band across the tower, but then puncturing that band with this vertical element and bringing this band in as just a sill piece underneath this panel here. And the panel, again, is has got a combination of windows in a similar pattern to where we see elsewhere in the building, and it's got this metal panel option. And here, we've kept glazing up around the top of the tower here to let some light into the tower. When the tower's in use, you'd have light seen outside, so it would be a bit of a beacon. And then we've dropped the clock down to be an element within the masonry of the tower above the panel. And that's three-dimensionally what it looks like. This is similar to what we just looked at. The difference is that that vertical element is a little bit taller here, and it encompasses the clock. So we have a taller vertical element where there's another bit of metal panel up at the top above the windows, and the clock is located within that band, or that panel. This is something different, a little simpler. Again, we've raised the base up. We have the heavy base band coming across at this level, and then at the lower level here, it marks the sill of the window. These two windows are set in a panel that is recessed brick. So the brick is set, you know, a half an inch back from the brick surrounding to create a little bit of a shadow line and a little line to create the vertical element here. And then we have the clock on a metal panel up in the top of the tower, and then the glazing on the sides of the tower, that area. And then this one is similar at the base. We've got the heavy band that comes across here. We've got the sill under the window here that picks up on this line. And here we've looked at it differently in a way that you see some other historic towers where the window pattern, you have two windows in the lower part of the tower and then one window in the upper part of the tower. This upper window is hanging from a trim band that wraps around the building with a little arch over the window. Continues around. The clock is back up in the top of the tower there. And then there's glazing on the sides of the tower. And there's your little village, Chief.
Opinions? I can start this conversation. I like the clock at the top.
Yeah.
I think it gets lost in the middle.
Yep.
It's prominent up there, yeah.
So it eliminates 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think study 1 is the strongest design.
I agree.
In the terms of using the brown tall base on the far left of the bay doors to tie that in with the tower, and then pick up a little eyebrow window in the tower that goes with the door, the apparatus bay doors in the front entrance. And I just like the clock being by itself, not surrounded by glass. And I really like Mark's treatment of the top of the tower, tying that in with the green. But the one thing that bothers me is the quantity of windows on the first floor on the far right in the conference room. That's the one area that doesn't look like a punched opening, which is in a masonry building, because you've got, I don't know, 8 windows or something.
I don't know, but yeah, we
But
know.
I would,
Had it right. No,
I would
that's the next one. Oh, that one on the front or on the
Yeah,
side?
on the first
Oh,
floor.
front.
On the first floor. on
Oh,
the-
that's
He's
always
talking
been that
about-
way. Okay.
yeah.
Right there, yeah.
But no, I like option 1 the best. And you listen to my bounding lines that tie the building together from left to right with common elements, so it reads as a whole building, even though there's a lot of detail within. But if you don't have these connecting points, the length of the building, it gets too busy.
Other comments?
Dan?
Well, I'm with Tom, I like one.
Oh, you just such
What did you say?
He said, I like one.
You like one?
And I'll join in on one. Chief?
I want to hear what they have to say first.
Oh, to be honest, other than eliminating 2 and 3, to my eyes, they're all really similar, but I have a slight preference for 1 over 4 and 5.
I concur with everyone else.
I bet that's the first one you came up with, isn't it?
That is
It's
wild.
close, it is close.
Isn't it? It's the first design that's usually the best. The
That's what I
other, the
always say.
tinkering was just, oh, let's see if we get something that works, but that was your first solution, wasn't it?
The windows were the same, but all we did was bring up the base there.
So the strange
Yeah.
part is I actually disagree with all of you. But, well, not all of you, I like 5. I like the older look with the double windows at the bottom and the smaller window. It just kind of gives you more of a New Englandy feel. But I can go with 1. But I'm just saying, when I look at it, that's the one that grabs me more than the other ones. But
Okay.
I'm not passionate enough about it to say, no, we gotta do
Do I hear a motion then?
this. Yeah.
Make a motion, we use study 1 for the tower design.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Okay.
All right.
That was easier than the sign.
Of course it was.
But, okay.
Oh, the conference room? Did-
Oh, the conference room windows, yes.
Should that match what's up top?
It doesn't have to, it just, I think you need to break that quantity of windows up with some masonry.
You blow that piece.
Was it 9 windows?
Trying to get back to option 1 here so we can.
Yeah, they're 9 windows.
Yeah, 9.
Say 3 and 3, 4 and 4, just,
By agreement, does
I think-
everybody agree that
I have no idea.
we'd like to have it broken up?
I think if I were going to.
Minute doesn't agree.
Yeah, I think if I were going to break it up, I would, I would repeat the pattern that's up above, and then it
Yeah.
doesn't feel
Stack it.
special. Well, I think, when we did this originally, if you remember, we were talking a lot about Richardson and form
Yes, we
follows
were.
function, and that's a special space down there. Up here, we have dorm rooms, and that's why we've got these smaller groupings because of the smaller rooms, whereas, this is the big training room and the main entrance. I think that's how we wound up with this grouping back in the day.
I don't have a preference either way with those. I'd rather hear what everyone else, I don't have an architect side, trust me, so.
Or nor do I, but I would say, I think I would like it better if it mimicked the upstairs.
If what, Don?
If it mimicked the upstairs.
Maybe mimic in similarity, but not being an exact mirror? Like,
yeah, I agree.
maybe less, like, have the gaps, if you will, in roughly the same place, but narrower gaps? I don't,
Or have single window on the outer and then a grouping in the middle, I don't think we should stack it, because I think we'll lose that,
Right.
that interest of
Yeah.
the variation of the windows, but it just seemed like there was too much glass,
So 7 in the middle, and one here,
something like that.
space, and then
What the study?
You
We'll
have
look
some
at it.
single
Yeah, we'll look
windows,
at
see
it.
the pattern where you
Yeah,
have single
yeah.
windows, then you have a grouping and a single window?
Yep, yep, yep.
Maybe we could do that on the first floor.
And the only reason I was saying, because see, this matches,
Yeah.
this matches, this doesn't. And if the idea is make this stand out, I'm okay with that, I don't have an issue, but again, I don't have that eye.
Take a look at it. It's complicated. I mean, there's so many. There's one window, there's 2 windows, there's 3, there's 4s, there's 8 or not.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's a wide variety of, it's a bit responsive to the space behind it and the space below it. So we'll look at it.
You have time to look at that,
Like
right?
1, 5, 1.
Maybe.
I don't know. Could we talk about the retaining wall briefly?
I think that's coming up at some point in time, right?
It's necessary, but the system is inarticulate. It has no base, middle, cap. It has no banding like the building. It has no variation in color. I think it wouldn't be such an objectionable component of this site if we had some kind of design interest. And I don't know if we could mix the block in coloration, say we did 4 of dark gray and then alternating light, dark, some way of adding interest to this wall. Make pilasters. Could we go straight wall and then step back? It's just incredibly ugly, incredibly necessary. And I don't know if the manufacturers offer any patterning we can do to create some visual interest to this very dominant wall.
So we had talked about the color options before, and there were 2 methods that they use. One is the staining in the field, and then the other is adding the integral admixture in the plant. And the integral admixture in the plant was costly, quite costly, because they don't like to do it, because if it's a special order, then they have to stop their production of the standard old block, and they have to do this special system with the admixture. They have to clean the molds and everything, so that's costly. The stain is something that the contractors do themselves. As I recall, it's not terribly consistent.
And you have to reapply,
You have to reapply it.
5 years.
It's not something that a manufacturer offers, the subcontractors offer it, so in terms of color, we wouldn't really know until a subcontractor was chosen what we would get. And there was a cost upcharge. It was less than the admixture, but,
Yeah. I
And-
mean, yeah, go ahead.
Is there just one standard color that is not an admixture and is not a staining?
gray,
It's like,
just the concrete.
great.
Are there other manufacturers that might offer standard coloration?
No,
No.
well, it would be the admixture again.
Yeah, it's the same.
In the plant.
For each one, I think. We don't know who we're gonna get, of course, so if, company A is well thought of, the company B and C get it, and you might not get the same look I'm even more willing to ask them if there's way of, you've done more research on this, Mark, so jump in any second, but the size of the block is X big, and it has some sort of a texture or a patterning to it, and the question would become, to me, can you intersperse one of those blocks with a different pattern so that there would be a change in shadow or something like that? I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know, because the different sorry, Mark, the different patterns, the blocks were different weights when they had the different patterns on them.
Oh.
And we looked at the different patterns, and no one liked any of the other patterns.
They look like plastic, yeah.
They look like plastic.
Did you have anything else you want to add to that?
There's definitely the additional cost for the certain patterns.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Some of them were more
But
expensive.
the manufacturers don't offer alternate colors. They don't have a palette. They just have one block.
I think the subcontractors, I think, buy the mold from a manufacturer. The manufacturer makes the mold, but then the local subcontractors make the blocks, because they're, I mean, they're thousands of pounds, these.
I mean,
Or not the
I'm
sub-
wondering, I mean, we'd have to design a whole system.
Yeah.
You'd have to design a wall. I mean, if they're precast blocks.
Yeah.
right? So, I mean.
But you could
I
put
mean-
color in the
When it's
mix.
design something,
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. That's, I think it's beyond what
I think, you know,
we're doing.
what was proposed here is a system and has limitations because it's a system, you know. What you're talking about is more of something, an engineered and designed wall that, you know, would be custom.
I think I'll just have to do a little more research on
Yeah.
what block manufacturers have available. It's so unusual to only have one color for a product.
Well, that's their base color, right?
Well, again, they can put the admixture in, they just don't,
There's an upcharge for.
There's an
for
upcharge.
different
Yeah.
color beyond. I mean, it's like with any precast, if you're doing like any color, adding any color to any precast, it's always gonna cost more than their
Right.
regular.
Do we know what, if we did half the block in one color and one half in another standard color?
I don't know off the top of my head.
do you have all the presentations on this?
I don't know, I was just gonna say, I have so many presentations on this flash drive, so, yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I was just
Yeah.
thinking, this is such a
We can look that
a
up.
bone of contention in the community, having a 30-foot-high
No, no, I
retaining wall
get
that
it.
is
I don't wanna cut them.
undetailed and
Yeah.
Well, and the wall has come down in height. We don't have the site drawings with us either, do we?
No. On the, this side here, it's come down.
On the west side, with the discussions that have been in place with the folks that own the Hillside Grill property, we were able to rethink the way the grading was going to happen there, and we were able to bring the height of that wall down. I mean, it was
9 or 10 feet,
It was
maybe?
9 or 10 feet in that corner, so from.
But the far back will still stay up, because it's retaining the upside of the hill.
north,
not,
yeah, the northwest corner is still 30 feet.
You got the memo that, you got, all got the memo about regrading, you know, so.
You guys got the email today that we sent about the discussion we had too, right?
From me?
Scott and I had a discussion with Hillside today, and they talked.
Yes, yeah,
We'll
we-
need to talk about
I
that
don't know
one.
anything about it, I forwarded what I got.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. Okay. We can find out, you know, is there a darker gray and then a lighter gray or something like that? I don't know.
It's whatever the plant uses.
Yeah.
It varies from plant to plant.
Yeah.
Doing just their base color. For doing a special color, it's
More.
it's gonna have cost. It's something, I mean, we could certainly get that, I guess.
Yep.
So-
We can follow up, we can find the information that we had on the cost before, and get that.
But see how
out
you
to
have the tall, dark band,
Yep.
the dark brown?
No,
We had something comparable in the retaining wall. We had just something that ties the retaining wall in with the building in terms of detailing and just so it's not just monotonous.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, Tom. Yeah.
Pink Floyd.
Schedule, everybody has a new schedule. It's the back side of the page now, we've made it to the back side. So, what we have coming up, if you approve us moving forward in the construction documents tonight, we didn't vote that, but, I mean, we don't vote, you didn't
You haven't
vote that
voted
yet?
on that yet, correct.
Okay, so you have to do that, but we have 2 remaining meetings with committees. The Concom, which is the land disturbance meeting, and then the planning board meeting. The land disturbance meeting, the drawings and the documents are in, but we have heard that they have a rather full docket, and it may not make it to that June 10th meeting, so we don't know, we're hoping. And then the planning board was going to be last night, and they asked us, they suggested we move it to the 18th. The drawings are due by the 11th, and I'm not really sure exactly, I can't almost remember why we were moving it. There were a couple things that they wanted us to think about, resolve, they wanted to think about, so we pushed out to June 18th, drawings due the 11th. We will be doing the pre-qualification process. Tim and I have talked about getting at least that advertisement going very shortly. And that'll be a requirement of somebody on this committee that sits through that process with us and with the OPM. And that'll be ongoing shortly. We have 2 committee meetings in the summer, one at 50, one at 75%. And we'll be doing a cost estimate that'll, in, late July into August. So that'll be our next time for money, that we'll have an idea of that, and the drawings will be much more advanced at that point. You need to get to the Secretary of State in August, at 7th, at least that's what I was told before. And I don't know, and then we have, for the bidding phase, the select board needs to vote it on to get on the ballot in September, and then the bidding will be in September into October in advance of potentially your town meeting, so if everything goes well. So that's the summer. It's a lighter schedule, hopefully, there was a lot of meetings, in a lot of outside of this committee meeting, and plenty of meetings here as well. So if anybody has any questions about that, it literally gets adjusted almost on a weekly basis, so if I've missed anything or didn't number something right, please forgive me, so. Anybody have any questions? So there's 2 committee meetings, 1 planning board, 1 conservation, in June, July, and August. So,
And then we're done with other committees, correct?
pardon me?
Then we're done with the application
We finished
process,
design
right?
review, we finished zoning.
Yep.
So, yeah. So those are the 2 that are done. I don't, we don't have any other public meetings scheduled. We don't have any other committees to meet with, as far as we know. So, and then we just have to get a, hopefully positive reaction from both land distribution and planning board, but.
Madam Chair, question, I don't want to jump ahead, but item 9 on the agenda has presentations to other committees and the select board. Do we envision that it would be this committee presenting to those boards without HKT?
I don't, unless the committee decides they need HKT there, but I mean, at this point in time, I don't know. I wouldn't see a need for them to be there, or the OPM to be there, but it's up to the committee.
I'd ask the chair of the financial planning, who would you want there?
Certainly this group. We certainly have enough information. My committee has been exposed to this at least once, if not twice. So I think with what we've put together, we probably can do it without HKT, but I'll have to run it by the committee.
How about the select board?
I think it would be valuable to have HKT there. I think, should questions come up as to past decisions being made and things like that that are architecturally related, design related.
Or would be like the final approval for us to go, to have the board say yes.
Yeah, I think you should have all
All hands on deck.
all hands on deck for that, because you got to get 4 select board members to vote,
Yes, you do.
or it's end of story.
Okay.
When do we have to do that? If we have to notify the Secretary of State in August?
So I think, well, the Secretary of State is pre-bidding. We have here, which sounds about right, the deadline for the select board to vote to place it on the ballot of September 24th. I think we should aim for earlier than that, because we're talking about,
Yep.
what's the town meeting? There was October
October 7th.
7th, okay.
Okay,
So we would certainly want the select board to make a decision on that earlier than September 24th.
Oh, yeah?
Would you
Yeah.
say your August meeting?
Yeah, and, yeah, I would, end of August, beginning of September.
Do you meet in August? Are you meeting?
We have
in
one
August?
meeting in August.
I think all those dates were given to us, so you're gonna have to re-give them, because I didn't make those
Yeah.
up. I wouldn't have.
No, all those dates are right that you have.
Okay, I do, okay.
It's just a matter of,
The deadline's fine, but the date that we have to meet with them.
The August meeting is the 12th.
So can we make,
That's fine, I mean, it's
A
fine
request.
with me. I don't know if we would we have final costs? August 12th?
No,
Yep, okay.
we were gonna present those on August 28th.
First meeting
Yeah,
in
August
September.
28th, which is our next meeting.
in September.
I mean, the next
We have
meeting.
not set September schedule yet. I anticipate that it would be the 9th. Second is Labor Day.
Your normal schedule is the second and fourth Mondays,
Yeah.
so the 9th would
So
be.
probably would be the 9th.
And financial planning,
Well, Madam Chair and Mitch, do we envision that we would need 3 separate meetings, or could we do financial planning appropriations and select board at the same time? Is that too much, in your opinion?
I think it might be too much.
Okay.
I could see if it made sense to you and to Scott to combine the two financial
Okay.
committees together.
Let me talk to Scott, and I'll come back to you as soon as possible.
When you
And-
speak to Scott, could you ask him if it's okay if it's just presented by us?
And I
We
will.
don't need them,
And I will, yep.
The select board would be the,
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wonder whether procedurally you should do, John, your committees after the select board, because your job is to sort of review the warrant. So in theory, we would need to set the warrant before you did that. I think for this, we all kind of know what it is. I'll leave that out.
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
So Mitch, are you saying a second meeting? So
So you,
have the committee present to financial planning and appropriations,
yeah.
then select board, then,
My thinking of the meetings that are needed to get to town meeting is the select board and then financial planning and appropriations, because you need to review and make a recommendation on the warrant.
okay.
If you, in theory, wanted to review in more detail earlier, to make a recommendation to the select board, that's
And
fine.
let me talk to Scott.
Yeah.
and then we'll
Get
get
something
back to
going.
you
I'll
with
get
date.
some-
to
It-
meet. Well, you
doesn't
won't have
matter
to
to me.
meet up with them anyway.
Okay.
But the select board tentatively will be September 9th, that we will need you.
We'll be back on vacation.
So,
Yes.
can we go
You have
back?
something going on then?
I wouldn't have been able to make the August one. I would be out of
Works
state.
out better.
but-
For me, it does.
Can we go back to the presentation,
That's what I was
vote on
saying.
design review and design development cost estimate, because we need to take a vote, right?
We will need to do, yeah. So we need to take a vote of whether, moving on to the next phase, which is construction documents. Correct?
Yes.
So we have to take a vote on design development cost estimate first, right?
No, it's all the same.
So they're the same.
So the open items that just we discussed tonight is further discussion on the roof monitors,
The sign.
the sign. Were there any other open items?
PV.
The windows.
EV, oh yeah, the windows.
Okay. So those are open, but
Yep, other than that, I'm fine with move ahead.
move forward. Do I hear a motion?
Move forward that with the exception of the above-mentioned items, we moved into the construction documents phase.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. All right. Budget presentation by Colliers basically has been done, right?
I think we did that.
No, we
I
haven't.
think we,
The budget presentation by Colliers is the 3.5 million, what the status is of that. Tim and I have been talking, Mitch had mentioned, and a couple other people had mentioned, wanted to know where we are on that money that was appropriated at the 2019 meeting. So I asked Colliers to put something together for us, we could talk about it tonight.
Questions on it?
I'd appreciate it maybe being walked through this since this is the first time we've seen,
Yeah, so this is the one that's in the landscape format.
mostly blank.
Yeah, because we don't have a budget.
We haven't done a lot yet, okay. Yep.
This is really to track what's been spent in the feasibility and schematic design phase. Really, we don't have the, it's separate than our budget range, because those numbers aren't really set, so it's easy to keep track of really, what was that, our budget, 3.5 million that we had? What's been contracted to date, what may be coming up that we need to contract for, and so what we anticipate spending in this process.
And if I may, just for a little clarification, there's 2 votes we need to take today that will affect, that will have to come out of that budget, and that's why I wanted this presentation to happen first, so you knew what was there, and then we could do the votes on the other.
Yeah, so just to, the way it's laid out, even though there's no numbers on the first page, you know, we would have what would eventually be our budget. Right now, our budget, if you were to go to the bottom column A, it's $3.5 million. Again, it's in thousands. And there's often moving money between line items, moving things around, but trying to stay within the budget. And so approved transfers, and I don't believe we've done any transfers as of yet. And then column C is the budget with the transfers, just showing where the total amount, we're still at 3.5, and if we had moved any money around, it's just shuffling the deck, if you will. Column D is really when we've approved an invoice, we consider that paid, even though there's a lag before it goes through the process and gets paid. Unpaid is for, represents items that we have a contract for, but we haven't necessarily been billed for it. So if we're kind of paying as we go or getting billed as the services are provided, we don't necessarily have a full contract for that. It's just where it's kind of as pay as needed, so to speak. And so then we have our total contract, which is just a summary of those. And then we have our anticipated costs. So column E is planned but not contracted. So typically, what we carry is the full budget line item minus what's been paid to date in that planned but not contracted. We're planning that we're gonna, at this point, need to spend all these funds. If, as you get towards the end, you realize that, hey, that we have surplus in this, we didn't have any legal fees, so, you know, we have a surplus, we can reduce that and draw down on that. But there's a little bit of discretion there. And then that will give you your total amount on the far right, and G is what you have in contract and what you've had planned and the total amount, and whether you're over or under your budget number. So if you go to the second page, you'll start to see some numbers in there. And the first item there is section 5A2, which is the architect, $1.558 million. As of the printing of this, $289,000 had been paid. Unpaid against the contract was another $1 million. And so that's a total of 1.3. We anticipated, and these are another 115,000, so that's in column E, and that's for the other sub-consultants that maybe haven't been contracted for yet. There's a whole list, a lengthy list, and that was made a part of HKT's contract from the beginning. It was a 200 and something thousand. We did move some, we're carrying some money, and so we probably should have shown it as a transfer, but further down on this page, you'll see that there's geotech engineering at 51.9, and then traffic engineering 51.9. So those were reduced out of the total that HKT had for their sub-consultants. But just following through on that 5A2 line, so there's that 115,000 anticipated, and so the total anticipated cost is 1.4, and we had a surplus of $80,000 on that budget line item. So really that's going to be compensated for in other line items where we might be over. So for instance, what we didn't have was hazmat consultant. We put in $100,000 because that's what we were told that the former consultant from the, Capital told us that it was what it would cost to build on that site. And that was just an estimate with kind of a menu of different things that he may need to do. So we just carried that, and that we haven't, we don't have a contract for that 100,000. All we have is a contractor at this point. When we did this, it was $10,000. We've recently asked them to do some additional test pits. But so that's why we're carrying 101,000 as planned but not contracted. I didn't reduce the planned but not contracted because that initial $10,000 that we spent, I figure we'll still be spending at least that amount. So, there, like I said, there's a little bit of discretion in that plan, but not contracted, how much we're gonna be. Are we gonna be over the budgeted line item? So you'll see if you go down to the geotech line, the HKT proposal had broken down that about $52,000 will be spent for just base design work for geotechnical services. So far, there's only been about $500 that's been billed. I believe it's just on one invoice for that. And so we're not carrying it as planned but not contracted because we have a contract at least for that full amount. So we're expecting to spend that full amount. Project management, it's similar, it's a full contract for that $172,000. That's why there's nothing in column E. Cost estimators, we haven't gotten the invoice for the first cost estimate that we just did. So therefore, there's no invoices in that, and we're anticipating that we'll be spending that full amount based on the proposal that we received for cost estimating services. Legal fees, again, it's $35.7 thousand. We haven't spent anything yet, so we're showing in the plan but not contracted that we're gonna spend. And at some point, could we reduce that? Sure, but that would be based on, as we get closer to the end of this phase, or do we think we're okay? You had a question?
I had a question about the need for a traffic engineer. In the last presentation, I think it might have been before design review, the landscape designer was saying that this type of project does not generate much traffic. It won't have much impact on Route 20. There was some concern about sight lines going east around the corner and the location of the crosswalk. But I don't really see the need to study traffic. I mean, we know there's 12 to 14,000 cars on Route 20. And the traffic generated by the fire station is insignificant.
Minimal. I think something came up recently
Yeah.
requesting that because it's a state road, that we will need some services.
So in our contract, this $51,000 is for PAR's traffic engineer to design the traffic light and preemption system and to do the permitting with Mass DOT. So that's what that's for. And then the planning board had requested something separate, which was the a full traffic study, which is generally a requirement, and we were asking for a waiver for it. And so that was one of the open items that we were going to go back and discuss with them, but we've had some subsequent discussions with the town engineer who's reviewed the drawings, and he agrees that he doesn't think that we should do that we need to do that. And so he was going to, I don't know if he was going to write a letter or,
That was part of
some
the-
sort of
the
memo.
delay.
Fred Litchfield.
Yes, Fred met with us, we discussed it, he said, he had submitted a letter to us, I think you guys, I don't know if you got a copy of it or not, but he submitted a letter to them. And then it was a matter of, he thought the letter was not misinterpreted, just interpreted differently. And that he didn't need a study, he just needed ABC, whatever it happened to be. One of those included realigning our driveway, so it lined up with Dunkin' Donuts driveway instead of them being offset. We did that.
Yeah.
We're doing
We talked
that.
about that the other day, it was done. So he doesn't believe we need the full study. He was gonna do a memo to the board explaining that we don't need a full study. So that was one of the other reasons we had delayed till the next meeting.
But a full study would be additional cost, correct?
Correct.
So we don't want to do that.
We don't want
We already did preliminary counts, though, so we did the counts, so we know them. And
The only problem, Tom, is whether we want to do it or not is irrelevant if the planning board makes it a condition.
then it'll just cost more.
So what we did do, which I forgot to mention, is we did request a copy of the Munis accounting, just so we could compare notes. Check the general ledger from the town, compare it against what we have, and we would do that periodically to make sure that we're capturing all the different costs that we have. So that's where these costs tied to ours, and really the big part of that, and the reason that reminded me to talk about that is on the page 3 was the site acquisition cost. So we saw that there was a placeholder in Munis, but I didn't see that there was actually a payment made.
Site acquisition,
Yeah.
payment, I'll get that for you.
Okay, so the amount was probably accurate, it just maybe that was, because it's in a different fiscal year, it may have been just not on that report.
It's got to do with, and I'm not gonna try to guess and explain to you how Jason does things, but it's got to do with how Jason does things. Jason Little is our fiscal director.
Okay.
So I will get some specifics from him.
Yeah, so the bottom of column D isn't capturing that payment. But the bottom of column E is showing that anticipated cost, so that's a little bit out of whack. But based on what was in here, we're showing that of the $3.5 million budget we had, we would have paid out to date $388,000. We would have under contract of 1.2 that's still to be paid. We had anticipated another 1.78, and 1.5 of that is for the procurement of the property. And so that would leave a total anticipated cost of 3.435. So roughly a balance left over, remaining balance of $70,000. Now, the question is where are we, and that's why we kind of wanted to show this. But what we have here is there's some additional costs that are going to be, excuse me, that are going to be coming, that we're trying to identify. And HKT provided some proposal requests yesterday on the sidewalk, the cost for designing the additional sidewalk, and a cost for
Geothermal.
the
wall.
geothermal design. So, the sidewalk was just under $10,000 at $9,500. The proposal for the geothermal design, $161,600. So because these just came in last night, I haven't had a chance to really go through these, but just on the face values of them, that would put us over that $3.5 million. So in looking at this, is there anything in our planned but not contracted that we know we're not going to do, or that really is, maybe can be adjusted or should be adjusted, that it isn't accurate? And so the big portion of that is the planned but not contracted for design services. Are there any consultants that would really be coming on later, which I don't,
I think we looked at that with you on the phone that one day, Amy, and for some reason I come up with number 38,006 in my head. That was for FF&E and
FF&E,
something else.
the antenna design.
The antenna.
was like 12,000.
We
Yeah, so
had
that was
carried
38.
something if you were going to need a tower antenna that
antenna.
was attached to the building,
The
close
building,
to the
yeah.
building, transferring structural loads into the building, which was
So 38,000, we think, somewhere in that range. Our base will be spent. We're behind on billing, but our base will be spent, and all the supplementals, which Tim is referring to, like the traffic and that'll all be spent by bidding as well. So that's all committed.
Yeah, and we have owner legal fees at 35.7, which we haven't spent anything to date. There's nothing on the horizon that I'm aware of that's imminent, but not saying that it won't be incurred by the time we have to get through town meeting.
Yeah, the board, the select board, carries a budget for town council services that I would hope would be able to absorb the normal stuff that we would deal with here. I imagine this is, if a town wanted to assign costs for every for the legal services for every project to that project. So far, that hasn't been needed. Might be worthwhile for you to talk to Tim McInerney, the town administrator, and just get confirmation that we have adequate budget in the general municipal side.
Okay.
For that.
Tim, I think a good meeting would be doing you, me, Jason, and Tim
Yeah.
to sit down and
Go through some of those things. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, and then obviously the big one here is hazmat consultant. So Rob Berger, so far he's what we've authorized, just recently gave them, authorized another $8,000 to do those test pits. So that's 18,000, but we were showing another 1.1, I'm sorry, 100,000.
That was mostly in CA, when he was digging and testing and all that, correct?
Yeah, most of that would come during construction, but we just don't know if if these test pits were to find something, then he'd have to do the next round of test pits and then do some analysis. And so you just never know.
And he also has to produce specifications,
Yes,
the bid documents.
we'd be asking
He's-
him to
He's your
provide,
OSP.
Yeah, we had a meeting before our estimate reconciliation. We spent some time talking about hazardous material and had a meeting with Rob Berger and the civil engineers. And one of the things we talked about is he's going to be developing a soil management plan, a groundwater plan for dewatering, and he'll also be doing the investigation of the infiltration systems, and that's what we talked about. And then he'll be doing specifications. So there will be some costs for him. Not that we could eliminate that whole 101,000, but maybe there's some of it that we can dig into.
And just so you know, Mitch, I saw your eyes get big when he's talked about the geothermal. We
Yeah.
have to get that decided because they need to get working on that. That includes a test well. Amy can explain that a little bit more. So they actually dig a test pit or a test well that
Well.
becomes permanent.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully
So-
it becomes
becomes-
permanent. So
hopefully,
the
if nothing
goal is for it
collapse.
to become permanent, but
Yeah.
there's always a chance that they can't. But, so ideally, if it becomes permanent, you have to think about it like you're shifting some construction cost into
Okay.
the design phase. And they will get a quote from a contractor. There's an estimate for what a contractor would cost to drill those wells, but they will get a quote from them. And then they also carried an allowance because of, the potential of running into contamination and how they might have to handle the water that's generated when they're drilling the well. So there's a bit of an allowance in this number
Okay.
too, just to deal with what they might find.
So we have a little fine tuning to do and a little bit of research. I think that meeting is a great idea to try and understand exactly where we are. And with these two proposals now, we have a little bit better understanding of what is coming up that we need to account for. So we are right up against that edge of that 3.5 number.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a good time to get Jason Little involved intimately in the project.
It'll be, the meeting, I'll reach out to Tim and US probably sometime. Tim's on vacation this week and I'm on vacation next week. But I will reach out to Tim, I'll send him an email, I know he's checking it, I check mine whenever I'm on, if he doesn't, my wife yells at me all the time, but anyway. We'll see if we can get something set up for the week of the 17th, maybe.
Sure.
You send me your availability so I can at least have an idea of what your availability is, and I'll see if I can get it set up.
Yeah.
19th is Juneteenth, obviously, so we won't, it'll be excluding that day.
So from a scheduled standpoint, we're a little nervous about both of these. I think probably the geothermal is probably the biggest concern, just to get a contractor on board and to get the well dug. But the sidewalk, we have to get a surveyor to, well, we have the surveyor who did the original survey, but we have to get him out to extend the survey. So,
All right. So we have the presentation and vote to fund the sidewalk extension design.
Well, we have two, we can decide, it's up to the, I just put them on, it doesn't matter what order we look at them in, but I think it's important to consider that we don't have enough money to cover both of them at this point. Doesn't mean looking at what we have right now, we're not, and I don't know what the options are.
Yeah. I mean, the geothermal is, you're saying that's required to move forward.
Yeah.
So,
And
Yeah.
Well,
the
they're both-
sidewalk is part of the approval conditions, not an option from planning board.
okay. All right, I don't remember where that, I think I know where that left off. Why don't we talk about the larger dollar item first?
All right, so let's go to the presentation and vote on geothermal.
So the presentation was what they just gave. How much did you say was?
161,600.
Okay.
So do I hear a motion or discussion? It has to be done, basically.
Well, I'll make a motion for the purposes of discussion. How's that? That we expend that money for the design.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, so, second.
Well, we don't have to, but
Did
I
you
mean,
second
that's a
it?
discussion to be had.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not willing to reconsider a prior decision that we're already moving forward on, and we've already voted to move forward into CD.
Understand that.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're gonna find the extra $70,000, $80,000. And I can't make that vote in good conscience without knowing where that's gonna come
Yeah.
from. So I don't know what to tell, I'm not, and they need to know, so I don't know, I'm kind of in a position right now that I don't know where we go.
Okay.
I can't, I don't think this committee can vote to overexpend what we were voted on by town meeting.
No, but we can vote to move some numbers around if we need to, if that's what's required. Or we can vote to stop the project. I mean,
I'm not trying, I'm just saying, it's where are you gonna get that other money? You said move it around, but where do we move it from?
well, we could move it from legal services if we need to move it somewhere. So,
Yeah, so right
Yeah.
now, as of today, we're talking about $171,000 that we would need to cover HKT's additional services. What I passed out was showing a surplus of $70,000. So basically, we gotta find $100,000.
Yep.
So, between legal at 35,000, as of today, that's 35,000. And then,
I want to say we expended some funds on legal, but I don't know, I thought it was in that spreadsheet I sent you. I'll take a look.
yeah, it didn't show up. And between hazmat consultants, that 101,000, now granted, we would need to at least retain 10,000 of that, but say roughly 90,000 of that is currently, as of today, available. So you have about 125,000, you needed 100, so we couldn't move numbers around. So that you can legitimately vote to approve their ad services. But what we will need to do is have that meeting and talk about, hey, if we have other things that are coming up that are requirements that weren't anticipated, like this sidewalk, what are our options for funding those?
Would, I don't want to do this, but,
I'll just wait in her ear.
That was out loud.
bidding, delaying bidding and taking bid, no.
Go ahead.
oh, not over this. Not over this.
Not over
We should
this,
consider
but, if you don't have enough money to go forward for some reason, do you wait for bidding
I
until
mean, we
after?
don't, it sounds like we have enough money to go forward. It's getting into a riskier phase, but we have enough money to make the decision tonight.
There are emergency funds that the town, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
what's the darn name of the fund?
The appropriate, reserve something.
Reserve
Yeah,
account, right?
yeah.
That is there, that we could, I couldn't think of the darn name for a second. So that's always possible, but
Have they expended any of those this year?
I don't think so, because the snow and ice ended up being really low.
That's usually where it's used.
Yeah,
But would they,
yeah.
I don't know.
We don't need to ask yet. But we're getting closer where we may need to think about
Yeah, we may not ask for specific dollar values, but at least ask for our options if we need to.
Yeah, I think you need to have that meeting before we think about that road.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
gonna volunteer it, because there's also ARPA money that's the select board is holding on to and still working on as of finally again this past
So,
Monday.
what, last night, or just, Monday, right?
2 nights ago.
Yeah.
That we have $1.8 million available for that, of which there will probably be requests for $10 million to spend out of it.
At least.
So there are some options. I'm not gonna say there are unlimited options or any easy options.
I obviously don't want to stop the project, that's not
Right,
the case.
right.
I'm just trying to be, as I've always told every board I've sat in front of, and every time I sat in front of the town, that our job is to be the stewards of the town's money, and
Yep.
they give us so much to spend. I just don't want to, I don't know legally
Yeah,
the actions we can take. I guess that's my concern.
yeah, so it sounds like we legally can approve this.
Our
Yeah,
OPM says so.
If you want, if the motion was to approve that, based on the discussion and transferring money within the line items that we have, we are still within budget. Technically,
Yeah,
as of today.
that's what we do. Yeah.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Well, no, it hasn't been made and seconded. It never got seconded. I just made
seconded
the
it.
He
motion. Did you?
seconded it.
Just so for everybody's sake, as Amy was taking a look at the, a copy of the proposal I had for their additional services, or for their base contract, but it was for all their sub-consultants. The communication antenna, there was some money set aside for that. It was only 8,000 and change, but it doesn't look like that's going to be needed. And then there was FF&E design, which was just over $30,000. It really doesn't come into play until construction. So that gives you another $38,000 of cushion, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'll trust you to decide the specifics about where to transfer money around. But it sounds like we're fine for now, but future decisions could change that.
Call for the vote?
Okay.
Are we voting for both the sidewalk
No.
and geothermal, or just the geothermal?
Geothermal right now. So, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. And I think we should continue sidewalk as far as voting on that. But
Should not vote for it tonight, or
I would say wait on the sidewalk, but that would be
say
me.
no to the sidewalk?
Well, I'm thinking that since we were required to do it and it's not on our site, that maybe there would be town funds for that.
So I had, as I said, an extensive conversation with Lori. It is a condition of approval. How it's paid for, I guess, is up to the town, but it is a condition of approval from the planning board that is included. It's not an option, it's not a, maybe we can do it later, it's not a pending other money, it is a condition of the approval.
And I understand that, but I think maybe looking at.
Remind me of the cost again?
10,000
Yeah, just under.
for design services.
Okay.
That takes it to the line by Hillside?
No, that takes it to the
Yes.
driveway. So,
To Hillside's driveway, or?
yes, so what it is, right now, Hillside has that one that goes up.
Yeah,
This takes it in front of the station,
yeah,
all the way to the driveway.
okay.
So right adjacent to street level, as
Yeah,
opposed
now,
to it being 10 feet up.
Scott and I were out there today, we were looking, there's probably gonna be a need for a retaining wall because of the slope. There will not be a need, because this is when, as we were discussing it, looking down, do we need to put railing in here? Because is that gonna be a fall hazard? So we talked to Bob Federico. Bob says, no, that's not gonna be a requirement. So, again, the retaining wall is part of the construction. It's got nothing to do with what we're
Right.
talking about today. So all we're talking about today is simply the design and the survey.
I mean, up to everybody else.
I mean, I don't consider it part of this project,
I don't either.
but we need planning board approval,
If we say no,
and we
planning
risk,
board will not approve it.
we risk that. Planning board is meeting again
We meet with them on the 18th.
in a couple weeks. How much, do you need to do that design work before the planning board meeting?
No.
Okay, good.
Can't do it.
It wouldn't be done before that.
Okay.
My concern is, I don't know the surveyor's schedule. I don't know how
Okay.
quickly, it's a busy time of year for
Yeah.
surveyors.
Okay.
I hate to say it, but if we're gonna move ahead with one,
Yeah. No, I-
for a pound and for, or whatever.
Well, I mean, I don't want to risk not being approved by the planning board. That,
Over 10K.
From the
right,
time.
right, that kills the project.
I'm simply speaking of my experience sitting in front of the planning board, and
Yeah.
I'll let, and Amy and Janet can speak, but, and from my discussion with Lori, it is not going to be an option, it is not going to be waived, it is going to happen.
Okay, yeah,
Now, How we pay for it to be constructed is a
Right,
whole nother
right,
animal.
right.
But,
Yeah,
It's just the design funds, so.
correct.
yeah. I mean, I think we have to say.
And I would make a motion that we approve the monies as.
That's 9,500 actually.
$9,500 for the survey and the design.
I'll
Wait a second. Okay. All those in favor?
Okay, can I make not necessarily to the vote, but that we ask HKT to defer spending that until after the planning board decision, crossing our fingers that maybe they could soften that requirement a little bit. Or if there's, I mean, if there's something you absolutely have to do for that, then that's,
You gotta get the survey done.
It's the survey,
It's
it's
the
getting on the
survey.
surveyors.
Okay.
I mean, let us make,
Yeah.
if it's okay with you, let us contact PAR so they can contact the surveyor, find out how far out the surveyor is.
Okay.
I mean, they would probably, we can ask them to notify us when they plan on coming, and
Yeah, I hope that, yeah, I don't know.
I just
mean,
hate
it's-
to have them say, we're 3 months out.
Yep.
Oh, but we have an opening next week because somebody canceled,
Right.
or,
Which
you know.
happens a
Do
lot.
you have
That happens a lot.
a rough guess as far as the construction cost of this?
I don't, because we haven't looked at,
Yeah.
the things that the chief was talking about. We think there's a drainage structure in the way that might need
Yeah,
to
this-
get moved.
I can tell you
There's
that
curbing.
Lori threw out $100,000 to me. Now, I don't know where she got that number, but that's what she threw
I
out.
think
Don't
that's
forget about what the DOT said.
my gut feeling.
Oh, yeah, there's one other thing.
Yeah, well, you sat in on that meeting with the DOT.
We had a pre-application meeting with DOT last week, I think.
Yeah, you said it was pretty,
Yeah, I mean, they're very black and white folks. They have rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. And one thing they said about this sidewalk is if we approve it, because it's within their jurisdiction, not
Yep.
the town's. So,
But we have to present it to them, so we
We've
still need
presented
to
to
do
them.
the
So they
design
might
work.
say
So in
no.
other words, the planning board can make it a requirement,
Yeah.
and the state DOT can say no.
no.
Okay.
I don't know.
Interesting,
I don't
huh?
think they
I
will.
don't, I don't think they will, but what they're
Right.
looking at is continuity of the accessible route and all, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Stopping it.
There'll have to be a transition down,
Yeah.
a handicap
a
transition
handicap
down.
transition.
But the fact is that we're
But
not, like, there's a whole, we call it hillside, but the whole property is one thing, and then it crosses a road and then continues down, and we're not crossing that road.
Right.
And they might not think
want
that is a good idea.
Yeah.
So we don't know. We're only surveying the piece that we're
Yeah.
been asked to do, so, just so you know.
yeah. And the funding is a different question.
It's a whole nother
Do we
question,
want
Mitch.
Do we want that in the same article for this?
I agree with you 5,000% on that.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Design
That's-
update presentation, we basically had that, right?
Yep.
We did it.
Okay. Discussion on responses to questions from public input session.
So during the public input session, there were several questions that came up. We were asked, and Amy and Janet made a list of those. The majority, almost all of those have been addressed in our frequently asked questions list. So I'm not going to go through the whole list. It's, most of them were either addressed in that list or we still need some additional information, such as there was, what decisions and what flexibility is there without delays? There really isn't, so that was one of the things that came up. So there's just some interesting things, but those are all, I have a list, I can give it to you all, but most of those are all addressed in the frequently asked questions. The bigger one that came up was the question about eliminating the rear wall and sloping it all the way back at a 3-to-1, right? I got that right, 3-to-1. So PAR had indicated, not PAR, HKT had indicated it would talk to PAR, they would review it, and I said, please, I need something from you guys that says what it is. Now, you all got a copy of this because I forwarded it to all of you. And basically what it says is, if you took that property up out of where it is and stuck it over here all by itself, you could grade it back without a problem. What it doesn't include is all the properties that come in on all sides of it. That's where the problems occur. So the results would be, and please, if I misspeak, throw something at me. The results would be this. If we did that, the east wall and the west wall would have to extend significantly further back. okay? Because
I don't mean to interrupt you. I'd rather hear the technical description from HKT.
it's up to you guys, but I'm pretty much trying to.
Doing a good job. I have to find my notes.
You want what you sent me? Because I have it right
I've
here.
got a copy of it here. But yeah,
So the west wall would have gone from 180 feet long to about 420.
You had a good
The
guess.
30-foot height in the northwest corner, that doesn't change. We still have a 30-foot
Yeah.
high wall. It just, we're getting more wall. And the east side is not as dramatic, but you're increasing the height of the walls there as well.
All the trees are gone.
All the
and
trees
you're
are gone,
cutting-
a huge amount of material removed.
How far back would we have to cut the trees to make this happen?
Pretty much all the way.
the limit of disturbance would extend approximately 380 feet, increased by approximately 40%. Vegetation would need to be cleared from almost the entire property to allow for the regrading. Clearing the trees which currently stabilize the large slope would remove the natural buffer to the abutters. The clearing of the vegetation would be up to the adjacent property lines. It would change the ground cover and stormwater calculations, requiring larger stormwater management systems to reduce the flows. And as they said, the retaining walls, you would eliminate the back retaining wall, but you would have longer east and west retaining walls just going substantially back into the site.
I read huge costs in this.
We believe it would be more expensive. We didn't, have a cost estimator
Hugely
estimate it,
more
there's no
expensive.
design. And an impact on the neighbors, a significant impact on the neighbors.
So I appreciate that you looked into this, because I think it was a viable question. I'm not going to disagree with the technical aspects of what the options are or anything like that, but I think it was good. I do want to take some pretty serious issue with the process of this. We received this memo tomorrow's 2 weeks ago. I suggested to both of you that we immediately send this out to Dario, the architect in town who made this recommendation, or the suggestion that we look at this at our public input meeting. You said no, that we should not do that.
What I said was, we should treat it like we treat every other question that comes up at the public information.
Yep.
Every one we do, every question that we get, we always say we will discuss it at our next meeting and present the answer. Every one.
But this was a little different.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
guy that got up and said, this is what I think you should do. It's no different,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And you confirmed what the chief said, so I respected that. I think that's a huge, huge mistake. Withholding some pretty pertinent information on the retaining wall, which happens to be the most controversial part of this project, other than perhaps the cost itself, from the public, from a member of the community.
We didn't withhold it.
Well, we
brought it up when it was appropriate.
held it back intentionally for 2 weeks. That's withholding. It's not a couple days. It's not a yes or no
So what you're saying is,
question.
every one of these questions we
do-
get, we should answer immediately in a public forum.
I think when we have the answer, it is better to
Can't
provide
answer
the,
these immediately.
provide the answer to the person that asked it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I completely disagree. I think you're asking for for us to treat Dario, in this case, different than we treated every other person that came forward with a question. We had numerous people that have come forward with questions.
And I think we should respond when we have a response
We
to the
agreed
person.
We agreed as a committee, when we first started this, and you agreed with it as well, because it was a unanimous vote, that every question that came up would be brought in front of the board to be discussed, not sent out by me, not sent out by you, not sent out by anyone, to be discussed before we put that information out. And that is what we were doing.
Yeah, if you consider this type of input the same as something general, I think we have a problem.
Mitch, we had architects say they don't like the way the building looks. I've seen those. So we didn't deal with those then. We've had,
Yeah.
Are you not asking for special
I-
treatment for this?
I think that this and anything like it, when we have the information, we should not hold on to it.
I'd like-
Because I,
For the rest of the committee.
yeah, I mean, I think it is bad process, and I think it will increase the risk of this project not being approved at town meeting. That's what I'm most concerned about.
I'd love to hear the input from the rest of the committee.
When I heard his question, I thought we had already covered this ground in previous discussions with how to deal with the dramatic change. And I didn't think that question from Dario was any great shakes. I mean, my first response was, well, yes, you could grade all the way back, but you're not considering all the other conditions. And then I responded to the chief, and I did a quick study, and I realized this, exactly what the engineers said, is you're not dealing with the adjacent properties.
As I said, I have no issue at all with the
and
technical aspects.
You got a response back, and was it not published on the website?
It was not.
This from HKT?
Right.
No.
Okay.
Because again, I don't publish anything to anyone, because that's what I was told by this body, was this body would make that decision. Not me, not Don, not Mitch, it would be made by this body. And that was what I was trying to stick with. Is that not the vote we took?
And I believe if we've handled it the same way for everybody, you don't make an exception because of who the person is. I mean, he's well-respected.
I think
but-
this is a different grade of question because we asked for and received something in writing from our consultants. It's not something a simple question that we answer internally. And honestly, I think we should answer everything. When we have an answer, we should provide it to the person that provided it or that requested it.
Then we
As
need-
soon as we have the answer.
Then we need to change the vote that we took months ago that said that's not what we're doing.
I don't remember the specifics of how
I
that
do,
vote
I
was
remember it
written.
very well, because I brought it up, and my statement was, me as the fire chief, unless it was an operational question that had strictly to do with the fire department, should I be making those decisions and putting that information out there? And the answer from the body was no.
I
We
think,
agreed on rules of engagement, as the chief is saying, rather than have stuff spraying all over town, out of our control. This would have been discussed at this meeting, which was scheduled for, was it last week?
Last Wednesday.
So the timeline stretched a bit, but we have this information. It's gone through a considerable technical review in terms of the gravity of the question that was asked. And we have this now, and it's here for the committee to discuss and determine what to do with it next.
yeah, I disagree. Again, I have no concerns about the technical response to this. I wouldn't pretend to know anything otherwise. I disagree with the process. I think treating, basically withholding pertinent information.
Nothing was withheld, Mitch, and that's an
It's
inappropriate statement.
We had it.
That's an
You
inappropriate
refused
statement.
to provide it to
No,
the
we did
person
not
that asked the
refuse. We went
question.
by the policy that this board set. To turn around and say we withheld information
I will
is
review.
disingenuous, and it's not fair.
All right.
We went by what this board said. Now, you wanted to send it out. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to you was, unless the chair tells me to do differently, I'm not going to do that. The chair said, don't do it, so I didn't.
I'm just saying that practice, whether or not it was consistent with something that this board may have voted otherwise earlier.
Make a motion and change it.
Is bad practice.
Make a motion and we'll change
If our
it.
interest is getting this project approved by the public.
My interest is being fair and equitable to all, the same way I enforce all the fire codes in town, the same way that the select board does things, fair and equitable. We don't treat any specific person, any specific question, special because of who they are or how they're looked up to by certain people. Okay, I can't. That's not fair for me to do. That's me saying, your question's more important than yours. And if I say that your question's more important than yours because you're an architect and you're a resident, that's not fair, Mitch. And that's what you're asking us to do.
Yeah, I will review the meeting under which we made a decision. I remember it being a little bit differently, and I think this is very different, not by the person who asked it, but by the fact that we had our consultants write a response with some good technical information in it, that we received well in advance of a meeting. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that. I don't think there's anything that we need to decide on this.
I don't think we're gonna
But
agree, so.
I think this lowers our chances of approval at town meeting. I really do.
Why? Just if I may, why? Simply because to spite, or because we gave the
No,
information
because
out?
people can stand up at town meeting and say that you had good information that you did not provide to the public when you had it.
And I think that that letter can go up tomorrow on the web, on our website.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't see where 2 weeks makes it so that we didn't provide the information.
Okay. All right, that's all I had to say on that.
Anybody else?
No?
Okay, on to the next. Public comment. Have any
Nobody
public?
here?
So any other business that legally can come before the committee?
Madam Chair, I have 2 questions. Chief, you were going to schedule video interviews?
Yeah,
Where
they've
did-
already, you
where-
guys have been getting emails on them.
I haven't seen anything about a date yet.
There's got to be something wrong with our system, because Kaylee sent it out to all of you. Kaylee sent it out to all of you guys.
Video
Said-
interviews? What video
The
interviews?
videos that we talked about, remember, I sent a form out and said, this is everything we're going to be doing.
Oh, for the cable TV stuff. Okay,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
send it all out. Kaylee's then we asked Kaylee to coordinate with you guys and get the dates and all that. I replied, Diana replied, in fact, I've already done mine. Dan replied, and Kaylee said she hadn't heard from some people yet. I said, well, then we'll talk about it tonight.
Okay.
So if you're not getting the emails, can you resend them out, or?
I can resend them again, the people I have.
Yeah, I just hadn't seen anything about setting or requesting a specific date yet.
Everything went out with a date request and said, this is the time we're looking for.
Now, you should have received an email from Neil and the chief requesting that you contact me to schedule
Yep.
a time.
Okay, yeah, if you can get it.
Maybe look in your junk email, but I'll resend it out again, because I know it, I sent it out to the whole board, to the whole committee, last week at least.
I'll double
Yeah,
check.
if those could get, if one was sent to me that I haven't responded to, I'm happy to do it, just send it again.
And will you send it out tomorrow or tonight?
I'll send it out, not tonight, but I'll send it out
No,
tomorrow.
and then I can let you know tomorrow, and then we'll figure out where
Be
mine's
happy to send it
going.
out tomorrow morning, I'll send it out first thing, and you guys, I'll wait, and if I don't hear from you, then I'll send another one out that says, I sent it out, did you not get it? So I don't know if
I don't
the
know where my
attachments, there was
stuff's going.
attachment on it, was there? Yeah, there was an attachment on it, so I don't know if that held it up, but,
Each one had an attachment with the pertinent part that they were speaking.
yep.
I'll
And
double
I
check. Chief.
got in your original one saying that we were gonna do it, who was doing what, but I haven't.
Yep, Mm-hmm. there was a couple follow-ups that we've sent out so far.
Yeah, mine's lost, so.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to send it out again tomorrow, because I know, yeah, because we included Lori, we added Lori, we have Scott and
Scott is scheduled, Lori is scheduled.
Scott and Bob are doing it. Pat and I did ours.
Tomorrow, but I have to check the calendar out, who's tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, Scott and Bob are tomorrow.
Okay, oh, great.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
we'll resend it out again.
And the second thing is, does the committee feel there's a need for additional community meetings in, let's say, late summer or into September to keep this top of mind with people?
Look at me. Our intent with this video is to try and get it out there. And if we do need to do then, one of the other things we're looking at doing, the deputy and I spoke about, is getting out to the different organizations in town, Rotary and Lions, or whoever else wants to invite us to come out and talk to them. But if we want to do additional information, that's up to this committee.
Another.
I don't know, I wouldn't want to commit HKT. We've already extended them to numerous additional meetings that they had originally planned.
Another suggestion is, you've got signage in the fire station. What's the advantage of having a sign in Town Hall, the library, Algonquin, and or Melican, in
Sign,
terms of visibility of the project?
We're sending out, if you guys all remember, I think I heard back from most of you, we're sending out flyers with the schools. You guys get copies of all that, because Diana replied, and she said, yeah, I think that's a great idea, and some other people, I think, Tom, I think you replied. So I don't know why these things, some of them are
I think
going out,
I
some
know,
aren't.
that email I saw.
But-
I saw that, yeah.
Okay, so that's on the same link that I send out, I send out everything else, so I don't know, I have to look and see what's going on. And so that's one thing that we're doing, we're sending them out that way. You talk about the little podium we have, not the
Yeah,
podium, but the
yeah,
little.
the sign you have at the fire
Yeah,
station.
yeah, that was created quite a while ago. We only have the one, but we can do more and put them out there. It doesn't matter to me.
I'm just saying, in terms of just visibility, getting people's eyeballs.
That was at the library a
Yeah.
couple months before town meeting. Then it went to town meeting, then it just came back to the fire station. We can put it back to the library, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I think putting, an updated rendering of the project and, I don't know, something on a sign.
URL linked to the
Yeah,
website, yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
proposed fire station design, vote anticipated this fall, for more information, look
See
at
this,
such
yeah.
and such.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's a good idea to put in whatever public buildings will give us permission to put it in.
Anyone else?
Dawn, I'm still bugged about the sign. If you could give me about 30 seconds on that. In the back of my head, there was a sign that I liked in town that I thought was simple, and I remembered it was the senior center has a nice sign. Should we pause for a minute for that? No, okay. I couldn't find a picture of the sign, so if you saw me clicking around here, I went on Google Earth and found a picture of the sign. And I think it's a more appropriate. It's hard to, kind of impossible to see because it's fuzzy. It's a nice simple sign. Everybody's seen it. I didn't remember what it looked like until I looked at it there. I think that's a more appropriate type of sign to have rather than say, let's have this big fancy structure and we'll figure out the middle later. Still bugging me. I know we decided on it. If you want to say, no, that's done, then I'll respect that. But I kind of wanted to at least bring that forward. This is what was in my head, and I think it's similar conceptually to what you were thinking
Yeah,
also.
I mean, wood, to me, that's probably not wood in the middle, but to me, that's wood, I don't know.
I think that's wood in the middle and,
Composite or something,
yeah, granite on the side, granite posts.
But don't you want like with like? You have a large institutional structure, 30,000 square feet, that's masonry, rather than the senior center is wood frame,
Yeah.
informal, wood sign, that's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, this is 150, the senior center sign isn't even, you can't see the building from the sign anyway. But something kind of like this is, larger, yeah, because it's a larger building. That's kind of, I think if we take out the electronic piece, what I would imagine we'd be left with is something like this. I would hope that the planning board doesn't really say, you're presenting this sign, this is what it has to be forever and ever and ever. I would ask for them to provide some flexibility on that so we can continue to refine that.
Well, if you have a sign in the downtown business, it has to be reviewed by design review as well as the planning board.
Yeah,
So what we present,
right, yeah, I'm just, if we'd been approved for the electronic portion, we'd be done. Yeah, I wanted to throw that out there, and if that's where it ends, that's where it ends.
Anyone else?
I think I'll say,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
no, second it.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
This was a long one.
Thank you all.